actually don't know whether it helps or it hurts them. It kind of takes them out of the mainstream for sure. With all that stuff on. That's why there are a few new sects who don't wear any of that stuff and actually wear regular clothes. I don't know whether it helps them or it hurts them.
I think it hurts them, and it only attracts crazy people. I mean, it attracts the wrong type of person. What they want to do is attract people who could contribute to the movement financially, with good arguments, looking sharp. I mean, there should be some guy up there like Kevin Samuel, like very articulate, man up. And they don't have to insult. They don't have to go the Sam Shimon route and stuff like that. I think they lose also. I mean, they may, women might dig it. But at the end of the day, it makes you look not sophisticated. Some of them may debate nicely. I mean, I had this discussion with that guy, General Yohana, and I would say he's smart, and he didn't really try to insult me while the other guys did. But I think that right when people start insulting, it's effective because demagoguery works because most people want to show. They don't really want to be challenged intellectually.
You didn't really debate him, though. You guys were just talking about January 6th.
Oh, so there's more than one. There's one that me, Enrique Tario, and then some guy named Bobby Pickles were on it, and then we went into the whole thing that I think I spoke to you about constantly here about the mixed multitudes and all this stuff, and he's like, well, the mixed multitudes were sent away by Ezra, which is a good response. If someone didn't know that Ezra lived hundreds and hundreds of years after Moses, so I mean, what because it does say that a mixed multitude was sent away. And
what was his response when you pointed that out?
That was his response. Oh no, in terms of the 100 years, I mean, he didn't have a response, and then he moved on to another thing. Yeah, I've never heard anyone link the mixed multitude, meaning men who married non-Israelite women when they came from Babylon, with the same mixed multitude of Exodus chapter 12. But I guess
sometimes, unfortunately, what they do is they find, especially that, because General Yohana is the one West, he's a Christian, really. That's all he is. They find one word, and then they'll find another word in the Bible, and they'll say, see, there's a connection there, where it might not be a connection. You might have to look at the context. So I think the best argument is for conversion is Genesis. I don't know if it's 12, but it's he is to become equal to the native born. One law between you and him, you're to love him as you love yourself. I think that's probably the best evidence because it says, a foreigner who's coming in and you're accepting him and he becomes equal to the native born. And then then you love him as you love yourself, or basically he's your neighbor now, right? And your neighbor is an Israelite. So that's conversion right there. But also you got Ruth, who's joining a people group, right? Because one thing they do say, which is a very good argument, I think, is, well, can you convert to an ethnicity? Can you convert to, can you become my father's son? It's no, but I don't think that's what an Israelite means. An Israelite is somebody who's a part of the nation of Israel. And you can join the nation or you can leave the nation, just like you can join and leave this nation. But I think conversion is definitely allowed in the Bible.
Yeah, I think the U.S. is probably the best modern day representation on how Israel functioned back then. Because being an American, American nowadays, it's a nationality, it's become an ethnicity, hamburgers and hot dogs. But that's not what you hear in Israel-Palestine debates. When they say ethnicity, they in some way mean some sort of genetic connection, which may be true if you're an Irishman or a Frenchman. But the idea of Israel, a nation unlike any other nation, that it can apply, or then God shows favoritism because of blood or DNA. And I could see how people could come to that conclusion, but they would have to ignore many verses. They would have to ignore many verses.
You have to, take a lot of the Bible out of context if you want to take that position. What some one West Hebrew Israelites do is they will say that the foreigners in Leviticus 19 and Genesis, they're actually Israelites who are secretly coming back.
Yeah.
So
it's identical. It's identical to what they teach nowadays. They didn't invent this. They basically look at what the Jews are saying and then reverse it.
That's right.
Because this is exactly what Chabad says. Chabad says that no, converts are not real converts. They're Jews who are coming back. It's identical. And yeah, they learn. That's why it's reverse racism.
You have to take all these like funky interpretations when you take a position like that. You know what I'm saying?
Right. Yeah, it's not clear. It's not plain.
Yeah.
And this is why, like, once you defeat that, their Black Hebrew Israelite theology doesn't exist. They could still be Black Hebrews, right? But when people think Black Hebrew Israelites is people who say, well, you're going to be my slave, you're going to be this and that, right? I mean, what if you decided to convert? I mean, is that an option?
Well, that's true, but it does say in Isaiah 14 that the captors will be captive.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I mean, I don't think any of those statements are talking about some sort of messianic age. I don't believe in a perpetual messianic age. But yeah, the idea that Israel had servants, that's what a slave is. A servant and slave is the same word. Am I for it? For sure. I mean, like, I wouldn't be like for the modern day prison system if I didn't believe in some form of indentured servitude.
Yeah, the prison system is slavery. They even have them working for companies and things like that. So,
yeah, I
mean, even if they didn't do the forced labor, it's still slavery. Yeah. You still own somebody. You tell them where to sleep.
Yeah, they're there without their consent. I mean, they don't want to be there.
No, I don't think Jesus was a real historical person.
Guys, like the show, follow the host, share with all the haters.
You ever watch Richard Carrier, Rabbi, or no?
No, I don't know who that is. Why, who's that?
He says Jesus didn't exist.
Oh, I don't think anyone could prove it either way. I mean, how can you prove someone didn't exist? It's a big world.
It's ridiculous to say I can prove he didn't exist.
Yeah, I think it's silly to say you could prove he did exist also.
That's right.
I'm pretty sure there's more evidence for him existing than not. The idea that they would have to invent a character, more likely than not, they corrupted the existence of someone. That's typically how it is, right? Was someone existed, and after he died, people created mythology around him. Gave him superhuman powers. That's a lot more likely than to say, well, they just invented a guy out of nowhere. All right.
That's right. So, in the story of Noah, doesn't it say, like, I will flood the world? Can't you interpret world differently in that sense? Because people used to say, their nation or their king's realm was their world. So you could say, yeah, he flooded this kingdom, he flooded this nation. It's not an entire global flood.
It's interesting. In Hebrew, the word earth, I think it's aretz. I think it's aretz, but aretz means land also. I mean, I have to double check. I'm pretty sure modern Hebrew, that's what it means. The understanding that they understood that there was something else apart from just this planet, and I would have been something they weren't aware of. So they probably thought that, yeah, in terms of the land, it was the earth. I mean, there was no notion of earth, so.
That's true, but do you think when they're talking about earth, do you think they could be talking about what they know to be existing? Like the Romans would say when you're, how they had like Hadrian's Wall, where it's separating like the south of England from Scotland and what have you. They would say, oh, this is the end of the world. Okay. So if this is the end of the world, then that must have been the perception of people at that time that whenever their realm ended, whenever their country ended, that was the end of the world or end of the known world.
That's what I mean. Yeah, known world. Look, Kazar is saying olam. Olam means world, but it doesn't mean planet, like Earth.
Right. What means planet? Interested.
Well, in terms of Earth means aretz, I believe. I mean, I have to double check. But I don't remember what planet means. So Earth in Hebrew. Yeah. I think it's aretz.
I just wanted to respond to someone in the comments.
Yeah, so it says, I mean, Kador haaretz, so like the planet, or so Kador means like a ball. I mean, Kador haaretz, so
You said it means a ball?
Well, globe. I mean, here it says Kador. I mean, Kador means like
well,
a globe or like a ball.
That proves the flat Earth thing, I guess.
Well, this is modern Hebrew.
Okay, so you're saying it might not have translated to that back.
Oh no, for sure it didn't. I mean, they'd have to have They believed that the Earth was flat, just because they didn't know any better.
The problem is, John, there aren't any witnesses. Like, you don't know who wrote any of these books, the 4 Gospels. You don't know who wrote them. They're not eyewitnesses. And you don't know who died for what. Just to remind you that Hanaf was the religion of Abraham and Muhammad. I'm not even sure what Hanaf is.
Mm. All right.
Expand, Naked Lunch. Please expand.
All right. Let's see. Let's guys, like the show. Follow the hosts. Share it with your haters. Let's go ahead and get some good discussions going back and forth. You have to understand that this is the only Jewish show that does this. This is at least the only Jewish show that puts Judaism to the test. There's some guys who try to teach Judaism on TikTok, but you're not allowed to challenge them from that perspective because they don't know how to respond. They'll be like, "This is a Jewish show for Jewish people," and they'll kick you out. Would you concur with that, Torah?
Yes, I would concur. You can't really debate with any of these rabbis.
I don't think there's any rabbis. Oh, with the exception of Rabbi Litvin, who does a lot.
You can't even debate with him either. I mean, he doesn't allow guests.
Yeah, right.
Just have to type in his comments.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting. I went on to Israel Palestine Live, and I'm friendly, this and that, and then Renzi comes up. Like these. They become sheep. They're like, don't you know, like Rabbi Littman said that we're not allowed to talk to Asher, and I'm like, so the host blocks me.
They issued a fatwa on you, bro.
Yeah, but the host blocks me, and I'm thinking, like, if some female just came up here and told me, don't you know, some other guy said that we're not allowed to do what? I'll be like, what? I mean,
yeah,
I get it. But first I want to make sure that,
exactly, sheep.
Yeah, I don't just take orders like that because, I could be mistreating someone because of the bias of someone else. It's so silly. It's so, I get it. Like if females want to do it, but a guy does it live on TikTok, I could tell why they have like anonymous names and no pictures. And I don't even know who he is. I got thousands of lectures on YouTube, thousands. I couldn't find one lecture from him, one class,
Litvin or Renzi?
No, Litvin.
Oh, okay.
There's nothing. There's no proof. The guy could just be a troll, but he calls himself Rabbi Litvin, like, and he won't debate me. And then he's just like, no, I get it. Like he speaks well. He's very authoritative when he speaks. Mainly because he's yelling at most of the people. And if you try to respond, like he'll drown you out. Like fake, you're fake, you're fake. I'm like, oh my gosh. I'm not a yeller. Someone says, Rabbi, what would Judaism have looked like during the Second Temple era? I know we evolved in practice. Look, if you want to know how Judaism looked like in the Second Temple era, just read the Mishnah. And I would say it's probably around 60% less in practice than what Jews do today. I would say that the average rabbi in the Mishnah would not be allowed in a synagogue today.
Why?
Because they haven't adopted all the practices that they adopt now. Like they won't... for example, Purim's coming up, March 27th. So it's taught like a halacha now that you have to read the Megillah at nighttime and in the morning. In the Mishnah, it just says to read it in the morning. So if any rabbi walked around telling people you only have to read it in the morning, they'd call him a heretic and call him a fake rabbi. Because the average Jew nowadays doesn't acknowledge the distinction, like the nuance, right? The distinction between nuance and what actually appears in source material. They don't know. All they know is what makes you popular. What does their what did his rabbi do? So, in terms of, like in the time of the Mishnah, the rabbis were to fill in all day long. In the time of the Mishnah, they prostrated in a synagogue. So in North Miami Beach here, like we had a synagogue for 2.5 years. Like my own synagogue, it's called Birkat Avraham. And then we had a section of the synagogue for people who wanted to prostrate, whatever. Because this is how there's some portions in the Mishnah that mention this. The Rambam clearly mentions that this is how they used to pray. So then I told the guy who was doing it, I'm like, look, because we were in the Jewish community of North Miami Beach, I said, don't go around doing this in other synagogues. You're not going to understand. Whatever. The guy did it anyways. So then when they asked the guy, why are you doing this? And they're like, oh, well, like this rabbi likes me doing it in his synagogue. All those surrounding synagogues started calling my synagogue a mosque. Stupidly. Stupidly. Now, of course, people didn't even bother to look like if this was an actual practice. There's some Baladim, but like some Yemenite Jews who do it still. There's some Moroccan Jews who still do it. But there's such a disconnect in the Jewish world between source material, what the Mishnah actually says, and what we do nowadays. And the average, I would say Judaism is a religion that the people within it know the least about how it functions. The least. All they know is what their rabbi teaches. And in the vast majority of cases, their rabbi is also like about tshuva. I mean, recently religious, he may be Israeli, so he speaks Hebrew, but he doesn't have the knowledge to give over laws correctly. All he does is regurgitate what his rabbi may have taught him. So that's not what I tell my students to do. I mean, like if someone wants to be my actual student, I'll say everything I say, trust but verify. It's keep me on point. Keep me on point. Because I'm not married to any ideology. I'm not married to Judaism. This notion that if for some reason, if we found a better system, an older text that actually made you a better person and presented God in a more consistently ethical manner, that we should stay in our religion just because we were born into that religion or because we made some commitment. Hey, God always wants you to go from a lower level of holiness to a higher level of holiness.
I would say holiness is connected with truth, though, and the truth, right? So, for example, if you have that holy book that makes you a better person, right, and then you have, let's say, the first verse talks about, I don't know, something we could prove to be false, right? So, an incorrect statement, and then following that incorrect statement, it says, interpret this literally. It's not a metaphorical statement. So that this book has something false in it. I would say you shouldn't follow that book no matter what it says.
Oh, I disagree. I disagree. I think you have to weigh things out because you have to compare. It's false and relative to what? All right. Do you have a book that's better?
I would say, yeah. I would say I do, yeah.
What do you mean? What book do you have? Assuming the Torah commands you to do this, right? It commanded you to behave inappropriately. What would you replace it with? What would you offer your kids as an alternative to it?
What would I offer my kids I don't think I would offer them an alternative to Torah. I think, you're saying hypothetically if Torah was a bad thing?
Correct, yeah. You have to replace it with something.
Okay, if it hypothetically was a bad thing, then it probably isn't true, so it probably isn't from God. So I would
No, not the whole thing. Not the whole Torah is bad. Right? There's parts of the Torah, there's a verse that confuses you. It's like breaking up with a chick when you don't have a backup chick. It doesn't make any sense. Right? I don't know if that's a bad analogy.
Nah, I'm ride or die though. I'm not leaving this chick.
Oh, that's you enable crazy women. Unfortunately.
No, but so okay, you're saying one verse I get caught on. Now, I probably just go to a different religion. I'm not sure any religion. I think if the whole world was Buddhist, I think we'd have a better world.
Okay. Granted, if you can guarantee to deactivate the evil desires of every human being, possibly we can coexist as Buddhists. If 80% of the world became Buddhist and 20% remained Muslim, in 20 years, the majority of the world will be Muslim. Yeah.
And I'm okay with hypotheticals, but you don't believe that, right? Like, you don't believe there is a problem with the Torah.
There are some verses that don't make sense to me.
Okay, like what?
Well, the whole Akeda doesn't make sense to me, honestly.
Wait, you said the whole Akeda?
Yeah, right. So the Akeda is the tying up of Isaac, let's say.
Okay, all right. So what's the problem with that one?
The idea that God, you see, I don't want to emphasize on this. I don't want people who are on that spectrum to leave Judaism just because a verse doesn't make sense.
No, I'm gonna
Yeah, but
I'm gonna become your teacher. I'm gonna help you out with understanding this.
And I appreciate it. I do. However, when I say it doesn't make sense to me, it means that at face value, when I'm sharing this verse with an inquisitive college kid, right, that it doesn't explain itself. If it needs interpretation, then it really can't stand up. The verse cannot stand up to scrutiny. I mean, from that perspective, because the person you're speaking to doesn't believe in the authority that the person who is expounding has over their thinking, right? I mean, they're saying, well, this is the word of God. This verse, at least, if this verse is the word of God, why does he need you to explain it to me? Okay. I mean, that's the position I take. I've heard, ways to make it make sense, but it's hard to say that you wouldn't wish that it was worded differently.
Okay, no, I don't. So this is what I would say about that. One, first of all, every single story about every single patriarch is a lesson to every single Israelite that comes after that, right? So the lesson here can be that the God of Israel is gonna, this is a difficult relationship. This is a hard relationship. This is not something that's easy. Being in a relationship with the God of Israel and keeping his laws is not, for the weak. That's why he didn't pick every single nation. He only picked one nation to keep this law. And eventually, right, it will be passed to every nation. But the story of Abraham lets Israelites know that they're going to have to sacrifice things. Additionally, for the literal interpretation, it's basically, God letting Abraham know that God will never... Okay, hold on. For the literal interpretation, you could say that Abraham is being told that the God of Israel values his submission and values his loyalty more than anything else. So when you have a servant who's submissive and loyal, you can give him with any task.
I want to say submission just because that's what the Muslims use against us.
Sorry, submission? What did you say?
I don't like hearing submission because that's what the Muslims use against us. That Abraham was a Muslim and everything like that. Go ahead.
Well, Abraham wasn't a Muslim because he submitted to Yahweh, right? And Allah is not Yahweh.
All right, guys. Okay, so then I agree that this is what Muslims use against us, but they're correct, right? To be a Muslim means to submit to God in the descriptive sense, to be a Christian means to believe in the Christ, right? So then I always say that Abraham was a Muslim like Muhammad was a Christian. But there's nothing wrong to say that we submitted to God. However, we're choosing to submit. Being tossed into slavery or into servitude is different than walking into it. It's such a power move from that perspective. I even tell this to women who submit to their husbands. You're choosing to submit. You can walk away, right? I mean, no one's got a gun to your head. So yeah, of course we submit to God once we've begun to trust God. I mean, from that perspective. But I mean,
I just cringe whenever I hear it. That's all. Yeah. I didn't mean to say anything. I apologize.
No, it's fine. It's cringy when they say it, because they say it so matter of fact.
Because they take a dogma that they have and they push it like it's truth, right? This is why people don't like religious people, because it's because of Muslims, really. Because what happens is eventually in a Muslim school, they're going to start teaching history that Jesus was a Muslim, Abraham was a Muslim, even though there's no evidence for this, right? Zero whatsoever. But they're going to start teaching it as if it's true, even though you have in this country, America, where people teach evolution, but that's not, and it's not like everyone here believes evolution. People just teach it because, it's a theory that they think they have some type of evidence for.
No, but evolution is a winner for religious people also, because if you go through what Darwin said happened first, and then next, and then next, and then next, it's not in days, but it's the exact same as Genesis. Genesis and Darwinism are not at odds with each other at all.
I would
But
say
that's because Darwin was a Christian. So a lot of his perspectives is actually connected to the book of Genesis.
I don't think Darwin was a Christian. Is that?
I'm telling you, he was a
Wait,
Christian.
hold
It's
on.
not a doubt. Look it up.
All right, so
Okay,
Darwin
okay.
believed in God, but I don't think he identified with the God of the Bible. I mean,
So if I could just talk about the evolution thing, evolution in its entirety can't be true and have Genesis be true, because if you're going to say that human beings are a special group of people who, God made him in their, made humans in his image, you can't say that a human being used to be a monkey and then monkeys used to be fish and then fish used to be.
yeah, but he didn't say in
Darwin doesn't
entirety.
say that.
I mean, he just said that the
That's what
notion.
Darwin does say, though.
Yeah, I mean, not in its
There's a
entirety.
missing link. Darwin specifically says there's a missing link between what was pre-human and what we are. So it doesn't say, Darwin does not say we were 100% evolved from monkeys. No.
Well, listen, more or less, we were apes, is what he's trying to say.
No.
Dude,
Anyways, we're talking about a theory here. I agree with fish, by the way.
With Fabian.
Look, I don't believe in evolution, but I don't think it necessarily contradicts the Bible, because you could say that God worked within evolution to create man. It's not an issue. I mean, I think even Kabbalists teach this, that women are more evolved because they're the last being created. Yeah, I mean, it's not. I mean, it's how you word it. For sure, Darwin believed in God, but it wasn't the God of the Bible, but which is fine, because the average person who pushes evolution and uses Darwin as their sage, doesn't acknowledge that Darwin was a theist. Einstein believed in God also. So, but anyways. All right, welcome, Justice.
Hey, how are you doing?
Good.
I was just listening, and I wanted to say that one of the topics that Samuel was talking to the people about is that Yah was telling the people that he desired mercy, not sacrifice. And I wasn't so sure if the gentleman was a Christian or atheist, but I know from a Christian perspective, there's a Romans chapter 8 as well, which talks about that I desire you to live as a living sacrifice, holy and pleasing unto God, which is the reasonable duty. So a lot of the times, because these are Abrahamic faiths and these are views on living towards God, there's always going to be a principle that we are to be less and that God is to be more, that his theories and his views for our actions towards our life is always going to be more important than how we feel we should operate.
Yeah, so I think that's once you buy into the system. This is why I teach that God admires people like Abraham and Moses, who actually doesn't just take God at face value, but argues with God, saying, wait, I mean,
Amen. That's good.
everyone has a basic sense of morality instilled in them, a basic sense. It's enough to get you to the door. I'm sorry. I mean, I just got a phone call. It's enough to get you to the doorstep of some sophisticated ethical belief system that'll drag you the rest of the way. But that's the only way God could reward you for choosing the right path. I mean, how can you reward you for choosing the right path if his Bible told you what was right and wrong to begin with? No, it's not true. You have to be able to distinguish it. Yeah, so this is why, I mean, I have a problem with the story of Abraham and Isaac. And I feel, in the way that I believe in God, that God is happy that I'm questioning it. And because I value
I agree
innocence.
too.
I
Yeah,
have a dumb question.
yeah, go ahead.
So what were Jews before they went to Judea? Because I say Judaism has been around since Adam, and I get corrected that's not true. Judaism wasn't until what Moses led them from Egypt to Judea.
Well, the word Judaism doesn't mean anything, and it doesn't really exist in the Bible. So the closest thing we have in the Bible to our belief system is Torah covenant. That's it. Torah contract. A contract that we have made with God to keep his laws, be his people, and he would be our God. Now, in this contract, there's curses that come upon you if you break these commands when you're living in the land, right? There's promises in there. of redemption once you do repent, right? This is all part of that contract. Call that Judaism, call that, the belief system of the Hebrews. I mean, people get stuck. It's like the Hebrews were like, the black Hebrews are like, oh, well, you ain't Jewish, you're not a Jew, you're Jewish. It's like, who are you talking to here? I mean, you're talking to someone who is like freshly saved or whatever they want to call it. No, I mean, you're talking to people who know the Bible. Clearly, let's put this, nomenclature and jargon aside. Are you in a Torah covenant? That's it. I mean, that's what being on the right path is. Now,
Did they call it? Did you guys call you guys something before Judaism?
No, it's just
You know
what they
what I'm trying to
were.
I mean, in the Bible, it's Israelites and Hebrews.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let me ask you something, Rabbi
I
Asher.
apologize. I'm showing my ignorance.
No, it's fine.
I'm gonna try to say this in Hebrew. I don't really know how to pronounce it. What's your take on people even doing this today? Metzitza b'peh.
Yeah. All right. So Matzitza B'Peh is the act of in some way helping coagulate the blood on the spot of the circumcision, right when the circumcision occurs. So the average moil today uses a syringe to do it. Now, before they had, plastic syringes, I mean, they had human syringes, right? And I mean, not only that, they have practices. I mean, they put, was it like cumin on it? There's spices they put like on that area to help the baby survive. Now, the notion of herpes and all these things didn't exist back then in people's minds. Is it better to do it with a syringe than not? Absolutely. Does anyone who in some way uses their mouth still, are they putting the baby's life in danger? Absolutely. So that answers a question. I mean, there's no weird fetish, that these guys have towards kids or whatever.
Yeah, don't you think it's a little weird though?
Yeah. No, I don't endorse the practice. I don't think anyone endorses the practice anymore.
No, that's not true. There are always reports of kids getting venereal diseases.
Okay, so there may be some old communities that still have it because that's how it appears in the books, but there's nothing,
Right.
It's
about tradition, right?
Sexual about it. There's nothing. Honestly, you're talking about an infant. The average human being finds no attraction in something like that, and it's not. I know what the haters say, but we have to use it logically, or we have to look at the whole scenario logically. Like if there was something inappropriate, it would appear in other places apart from in front of hundreds of people, one time in the baby's life when it's 8 months old. It's not, it doesn't, there's many primitive societies that had many primitive practices. All right. But again,
so would you be, so if this like Satmar guy from Brooklyn came to you and said he did this practice, would you debate him and tell him to stop and tell him to do a medical procedure or a more modern procedure, I guess?
I mean, absolutely. I mean, not debate. There's something to debate. The idea that it could be accomplished another way with this big syringe they use, that's what should be done. But they'll fall back on the original text that says this and that. I mean, what are you going to do? I mean, that's most rabbis don't do it. I mean, most Mormons don't do it like that.
Which text says that?
It's in the Talmud.
Gemara or the Mishnah?
It's in everything. It's in the Rambam. It's in the
and what it says, we did this or to do this.
You're getting stuck on this. I'm just telling you, it was done as a medical procedure. Like,
okay.
Don't get stuck on optics. Even girls getting married at the age of 12 nowadays makes no sense. It made sense to them back then. All right. I mean, it didn't traumatize women or anything like that.
Though.
What?
The optics are really bad. I mean,
But Tori, what's much, much, much worse is female circumcision that Muslims do. Not all Muslims.
100% agree with that.
Yeah, for sure. They don't do it in the name of Islam.
Debate and they bring this up. This is what you throw back at them.
Yeah,
I commented some, but I'm saying Sharia is apartheid. It 100% is apartheid. Apartheid is the idea of having two laws for two different groups of people. The Torah actually says to have one law with the Israelite and the foreigner, And if you look at the hadith I gave to you, Sahih Bukhari 4557, it talks about how Muslims are the best of people and to bring the non-Muslims to Islam in chains. Okay, so it's slavery for the non-Muslims. I don't know why you're trying to debate me when you could just read the hadith. That's
Well, in actuality, there's 2 or 3 ways that you can do it. It's either they kill you, they convert you, or they tax you.
Yep.
There's one
more
not
than
just
that.
one way.
Yeah, exactly.
It's
Very-
kill, tax, or convert.
Yeah, I mean, Mystic, I just showed you in Bukhari where it talks about all this type of slavery for people who aren't Muslims.
Yeah.
I don't know why you want to be a keyboard warrior.
All right. I mean, don't worry about the comments. I mean, the comments are all over the
All
place.
right.
And they're not really
Rabbi,
cool.
you said earlier that if you thought there was a better religion or to it, what do you think about the teachings of Jesus?
Almost everything I heard Jesus say just reiterates what the Torah says, with the exception of him trying to go above and beyond. Like he'll say, like, the Torah says to do this, but I tell you to do this, which means that, I mean, he's not abolishing law, he's adding to it. So just reading the Gospels alone, I never would have thought that people would have thought that he was creating a new religion. It seems like he was trying to get people to repent, but what does repent mean? I mean, teshuvah means to return to the Torah.
Right.
Now, in
Right.
terms of acknowledging him as the Messiah, forever, for all generations, I don't think he said that. I mean, the narrative of the of the gospel said it. So I mean, who's the most tragic figure in religious history? Probably Jesus, because his name has been misappropriated, and I mean, a new religion came out of it when I don't think he ever had that in mind. It's freaking Paul screwed it all up.
Right, exactly. And that's why I tell people to stick with the Gospels. And are you a Christian or are you a Paulist? So that's what I also say. Also,
Yeah, but if you view
just
the
stick to
Gospels,
what Jesus said, go ahead.
Yeah, so it should be viewed as a Jewish book of apocrypha. Not so much apocrypha, but just, I mean, there's many books on Musar in Judaism, books that are there to strengthen people's walk with God, and that's what I see Jesus dealing with. He's dealing with the hypocrisy of his time. And I think that if it occurred, like the book says it occurred that the Sadducees, the Pharisees were both involved
right.
like in getting him crucified, then we need to apologize for that, because that was wrong. He did not deserve the death penalty. And I don't know why there aren't enough rabbis saying that, because it's clear it's not the Romans who unalived him, it was Jewish people. According to Jewish law, like if you put like someone in front of a train and they get hit, you're liable.
We all know it was the Palestinians that unalived Jesus. You just talk
right.
to anybody, on that side, and they'll say that Jesus was Palestinian. Well, that means that the Palestinians unalived Jesus, right?
Yeah,
And
well,
then
they unalive
don't
each other
say
all
for
the
that.
time. I mean, it's nothing new.
No, thank you, Rabbi. That means a lot to me. It really does.
No problem.
I like the fact that you mentioned that a lot of people are Paulists versus followers of Jesus who claim to be Christian. An Ethiopian guy said that to me a long time ago when I was Christian, and I got offended. But the more I started to think about it, I was like, you're right, because a lot of the ideologies that people take to question living within the concept and the construct of the Torah is from Paul. Nothing that Jesus said that connected to that. Even with what Rabbi was saying, he said to not go below what the Pharisees did. He said to surpass it, which I think that his ideology of that, which is, I guess, why that always stuck in my mind as important, was you're to live your life without blemish, spot, or wrinkle. The same way we try to keep our the animals, can present them toward those animals were designed to be replacements for our error when it came to sin offering.
Mm-hmm.
So with that, I mean, we're to live our life as clean as we possibly can.
Yeah.
I guess that's what I saw in it.
So, but there was a rabbi in Asia Torah. I don't think he's there anymore. His name was Rabbi Ken Spiro, big historian guy. He always said, roses are red, violets are bluish. If it wasn't for Paul, we'd all be Jewish. And there's something to that. If it wasn't for Paul, the whole world really would have converted to Judaism. I mean, assuming they all became followers of Jesus. Jesus, his message was to return to the Torah, to do better. I mean, he was like a rebbe of his time. Like, I mean, some sort of more like motivational, charismatic speaker, bringing people to do good. And even when they accused him, when they were going to take him up to the mountain and throw him over, he says, like, why do you try to unalive me? And he says, because a mere man claims to be God. And he denies it. He says, but doesn't your Torah say that we're all gods or something like that?
Right.
The whole notion of like Elohim.
Yeah, ye are gods, those to whom the message is given.
Yeah, so like, I guess most people say like Elohim. In terms of Elohim, it also like depicts the members of the Sanhedrin. It means powerful ones, and that it seems that's what Jesus was trying to say. So even from that perspective, when he had the opportunity, right? I mean, he's protected by God and the angels. I mean, he could have said what he wanted, and he backed up his claim that, yeah, like I'm part of God, or God just like you're God, right? Like, we're powerful because we're, I don't know, Jewish or Torah inspired, all of the above. All right, what's next, guys?
My main takeaways as a Christian after rereading the Gospels recently is, they asked Jesus, what are the two commandments? What are the two greatest commandments? And it's honor the father and mother and treat others as you wanted to be treated. I just think those teachings are so inspiring, what Jesus said and how to live. Especially Islam doesn't come close to that. Islam is the antithesis of that. But where I struggle with the Old Testament is, they wiped out the Canaanites. They did this, unalive this person. All these people were unalived. It's hard for me to think that. I'm going to make everybody mad, but here we go. It's hard for me to think that the God Yahweh of the Old Testament is the same God, the Creator God, God the Father that Jesus spoke of. Because the God the Father that Jesus spoke of in the New Testament was peace, love, and mercy.
Uh-huh.
Can you help me with?
Sure.
Is in the Old Testament?
I think it's akin to an American nowadays being anti-war and being a vegetarian and saying, oh, guns, we don't need that. Freedom of speech, we don't need that. The right to bear arms, to assemble as an organized militia, we don't need that. However, if they would read a book on the Revolutionary War, the people who wrote these like who wrote the Constitution, like who inspired the amendments, were soldiers. I mean, they went to war and killed many British people in order to secure the freedoms that we have today. So it's hard for us to really relate to them back then. But if it wasn't for them, we wouldn't have the luxuries that we have today to speak out. Like all the rights that we appreciate today, we have to pay tribute to the people who came before. And that's what I see with Christians in some way having an issue with how God acted in the Jewish Bible. The reason Jesus lived in Israel back then, Israel proper, even though it was occupied by the Romans, was because that land was conquered from the 7 Canaanite nations. He existed with an identity of an Israelite, a Judean, because that portion of Judah initially didn't belong to the Jews. So you're reading chronologically how they conquered the land. I mean, how could they have ever entered Israel if the Israelites in the wilderness would have been talking like Jesus back then, right? I mean, they would have prayed for the Amalekites, they would have prayed for the Midianites and not gone to war. So you can't in some way pull the rug up from under you. Yeah, sorry, and I got a phone call. But you can't pull the rug up from under you historically and say like only because, I mean, I like what Jesus is saying now, but Jesus is in some way living in a society that has been sensitized because of all the hard work and all the cruel things that the early Israelites had to do to their enemies. Right? I don't see how I mean someone chooses not to make that connection.
I had never thought about it like that, and you just changed my entire outlook. And I'm being serious. I am not joking. You really helped me out with that. I had never thought about it like that.
Oh, well, look at that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Sincerely, thank you.
No problem. No problem. All right, what's next? But I grew up the idea I can't be welcome there. Welcome where? We feel bodies bring about fear and cowardice and insane justice. What is the name of TikTok rabbi that forbid people to talk to Asher? Oh, that's Litvin. Yeah, some guy named Litvin. Weak physical bodies. It's not that people dislike me. That's fine. It's the people who follow. Especially when I see guys following, guys who have their own TikTok lives and they argue Israel, Palestine. First of all, okay, if you're going to write people off because of what someone happens to say or because of rumors, how can you blame someone writing Israel off for the same reasons? Right? The average Muslim who dislikes Israelis or the state of Israel has never visited Israel, doesn't understand what real apartheid is. Right? All they know is rumors. You're doing just what they do. You're as unimpressive as they are. Don't fall into the same trap. Okay? If anyone talks crap about anyone, find out for yourself. Instead of just listening to what we call Motze Shemra, Lashon Hara, Rechilut. It's silly. It's silly. Guys.
I have a history question for you. What was lost in Jerusalem burning in 870 AD?
Nothing. Nothing.
I mean, were there ancient texts lost?
No.
Is there?
No. Well, ancient texts. There's no understanding that any books were kept in the temple. There's a Christian understanding, but it appears nowhere, in Jewish texts at least, that in the temple the genealogies were kept there. No Jewish text ever said that. I don't know where they got that from, because the Christians will say, well, we can't know who's from the line of David because the genealogies were kept in the temple. I mean, if that was the case, why weren't they lost after the first destruction? There was no Ark of the Covenant in the second temple. There's a debate if there was even a menorah, even though like in the Ark of Titus, we see that they left with the menorah. Some people say that it never came back. Well, the original menorah at least, but that there was like some makeshift menorah made. Anyways, yeah. So when they say that the curtain was torn, right? I mean, that's the Christian rendition. It was torn, but there was nothing in the room. So then what but the whole notion of this curtain was what separated the priest from everybody else. But if there was no Ark of the Covenant in there, what made that room holy? Don't forget, I mean, Jerusalem in itself is not holy. But the term holy just means set apart, but it's not sanctioned from God's perspective. It's sanctioned as much as he allowed the judges to sanctify any piece of land, because that the place that God chose, like the base of Bechira, is anywhere the sages decided it was. That we know that the Ark of the Ark of the Covenant and the Mishkan, the sanctuary, sat in Shiloh. I think it's sat in Gilboa. It sat in many different places till it eventually sat in Jerusalem. But it was never prophesied in the Torah or mentioned in the Torah that the final place would be Jerusalem. So the point is that anywhere that the Ark of the Covenant went was the spot. Right? So if there was no Ark of the Covenant there, then it doesn't have biblical holiness from that perspective. So the idea that some curtain would have been torn would have been completely symbolic.
What do you think? What do you think whenever the Ethiopians say they have the Ark of the Covenant and Aksa, something like that?
Yeah, I mean, it's some church on a mountain. But if they have it, why didn't they take a picture of it? It's take a picture of it.
it's just interesting to think that they say this and one person is designated to go in there and guard it for their entire life, and then whenever they pass away, then the next person goes in. It would just be wonderful if someone was allowed to take a picture, if someone was allowed to see what they actually have in there.
Yeah, it's a relic.
I think it would mean a lot for the world.
No, they're catfishing us. I mean, that's a theological catfish. Right? At least like the Catholic relics, you could go to the Church of the Holy Sepulchre and you could see them. Right now, I mean, they're saying that it's in this room, but no one's ever seen it. I mean, come on, man. And people believe it. And if they would acknowledge we don't have it, then people would stop visiting there. So,
Right.
like, why would God even tolerate that? Like, why would God tolerate people having secrets? And when the whole world is suffering, I mean, it's like saying, I have the cure for COVID. Where is it? It's in Compton. It's in this house, but you can't walk in, right? It's so silly. It's just so silly.
You said, why would God tolerate people having secrets?
I mean, in his behalf.
Well, I don't think that they have the anything, but I would assume, and I'm praying, that at some point there is going to be a group of people that are out there that God has managed somehow, with all the satellites in the world and with all the listening devices and all the GPSs, I would hope that he has managed to keep a group of people away from all of this bastardization that goes on in the world. That there's actually a people that he was able to remain keeping. And this is just me probably just fantasizing.
Yeah, but for whose sake?
Keep him. Huh?
For whose sake?
For his sake, until he decides, hey, finally it's time to deal with these situations and deal with it strongly and without question. Because a lot of us say one thing, but the way we live and our plans and how we execute everything just doesn't seem like it's something that represents God.
So, well, the reason I asked, for whose sake, it seems that if God does anything, that's not for our sake, then it's a bit wasted. Then, I don't think God, what makes God God is that he's good. With the notion that he has to set, the Avengers, the religious Avengers away on some mountain, for what? I mean, he needs that. I mean, we need it. I mean, how many generations have to die? I mean, how many? We're just. It's interesting. We're not dying because of lack of knowledge. It's because of lies. Essentially, lies destroy. Right? I mean, there's nothing more harmful on this planet than lying. This is why in Judaism, the whole notion of lashon hara, of speaking evil words, is like the worst thing you could do, because from that perspective, you poison the well for everybody. If you make up lies, like most religious people do, unfortunately, whenever I dialogue with Muslims, it's like a lie after lie or exaggeration after exaggeration, saying something is factual when it's not. The most upright thing you could do as a male is always tell the truth, right? Always tell the truth. I get it, you're talking. That you could finesse the truth on trivial matters, okay? But in terms of what you consider as part of your religion, whether you're just going to pay lip service to it just because it's fun being part of this religion, or because you want to be liked, that's what most Jews who argue with me argue from that perspective. They're like, yeah, I know it makes sense. I know there's no source for this, but it's just not what we do. So I'm like, what validation are you looking for? The validation of man or the validation of God? Now, what does validation of God really mean? It means you validating yourself. And I believe in God, but how does it affect you? Walking around, feeling that you've let God down. It's the same feeling that you get when you feel that you've let yourself down. You've missed the bar of integrity, of you know what? Being a real thug, I'm doing something because I know it's right. I'm doing something even though I don't get paid for to do it. I'm doing it because it's the right thing to do when nobody's looking. I mean, is there anything more gangster than that? No, I'm not going to wear a mask. No, I'm not going to do this. This is akin to being subject to God. This is why the biggest group that disobeyed the mandates were religious people.
Amen. That was true.
You know, the secularists were the first, you know, to get on their knees. The first. Now, you would feel it's the opposite, right? Anarchists, you know, like the anarchists with mohawks and Doc Martens and little suspenders were the first ones, you know, to start yelling at you to put on your mask. You see how upside down it is? But it was religious guys, in particular Christians, you know, who said, "You want me to shut down my church? Bring the cops." You see the difference? The atheistic community, the atheists are the nuts. Like, they're the nutty ones. You're submitting to a higher power for the same, you know, I mean, for the same idea means, I mean, submitting to what you know is right. You're submitting to a standard that higher power has allowed you to see. But trying to figure out everything on your own just makes you subject to popular opinion and cowardice and lacking courage, which is probably the biggest epidemic out there. Cowardice kills people. But okay. Who is this, man?
So somebody brought up earlier there was no proof that Jesus lived, but the Jewish historian Josephus talks about him a few times, and he also talks about John the Baptist.
Yeah.
So I think that person is no longer on here, but I was going to say, yes, there is.
So the problem with Josephus, everybody acknowledges that Josephus has been tampered with. Everybody acknowledges. Like, not necessarily every instance that Jesus appears in, but one portion where Josephus says that Jesus is more than a man, people assume that he wouldn't have wrote something like that. So who knows? Like, I don't think even to today, like, we have like a Hebrew copy of Josephus. Like, we only have his works via the Catholic Church. So more of a proof would be the Talmud. The Talmud talks about Yeshua Notri. The question is if it's the same guy, because this guy existed a few hundred years before. So I don't think that you need proof that even Moses existed to validate this book as the Word of God. And I'm not a Christian, but I'm talking about Torah from Sinai. What makes Torah true, or the Bible true, is that it works. It's worked more than any other system to keep us progressing forward than any other system. And people have tried, from the French Revolution, you know, to communism. They've tried to reinvent the wheel ethically without God, and they just leave a trail of blood and carnage. This is what should make this book special to us. Not because there's a story that may have been plagiarized here and there. Some people, they fold over something so small. I mean, something so trivial, right? Who cares? Has the Torah been the main book that has sensitized this planet ethically? It's been the main book, not the only book, but it's been the main book. And even if an atheist can acknowledge that, then he's an ingrate. Right? I mean, there's many atheists who acknowledge it. There's many, you know, from that perspective, it would be an atheist that doesn't have leftism as part of his religion. I mean, he would be a conservative atheist. You know, so yeah, but you don't have to. I think Muslims created this silly argument, like, because they'll say, like, do you have a Torah scroll signed by Moses? Oh, well, we know that Muhammad wrote our Quran, which, I mean, they don't know either, you know, but they think that that's enough to follow any system. Like, who cares? I mean, you know, Tupac could have read, you know, wrote this and that. I know Tupac existed. That doesn't mean that Tupac is giving me the word of God. You know, they play these mind tricks that are so stupid. It's like, they essentially bring in people who would have come in anyways. Right? I mean, they're not going to bring in thinkers. Whenever you tell someone that Abraham was a Muslim or Moses was a Muslim, I mean, who are you fooling? I mean, I know who you're fooling. The vast majority of people out there, you know, those who make up the dummy vote. And yes, I mean, from that perspective, might does make right, but it does make you look stupid, like, amongst real intellectuals. Because I always say, yeah, sure, Moses was a Muslim, like Muhammad was a Christian. You know, if submitting to God makes you a Muslim, then believing in Jesus makes you a Christian. They're like, no. It's exactly, guys. First you tell the truth, and then you give your opinion.
My niece was here a couple of weeks ago, and we were talking, and she asked me a bunch of questions because she started taking a philosophy course. And I told her that you got to be careful of trying to argue with some things that people say, because some of the things that they say, the only reason why you might not want to agree with it is because of how you were raised, but it does not mean that it's not true in some shape or form. For instance, atheists asking, if you were not born Christian, would you believe in Jesus? Obviously, the answer is no, because whatever culture my parents were in, that's how I would be raised. However, culture is designed with the focus and the center of family. So issue of war changes the focus of my family, and it pushes the agenda of your family as prime. You want me to keep your ways now that you won the battle, and not the ways of my forefathers.
Mhm.
So you're willing to do everything or anything to get me to see that perspective. It's the same thing with women. You think if your son goes away and he marries a woman and brings her back, now everybody is teaching that woman the ways and the perspectives of your culture, because whatever she believed in might cause her to not to unconsciously trample on the belief system and the ways of your household.
That's very interesting. Like, I think one reason the Torah always describes blessing as being powerful and being large in number, it means people traditionally, when they saw someone defeated in battle, disorganized, unethical, behaving like an animal, that gave an incorrect representation of their God and essentially their belief system. So I don't think God ever wanted Israel to stand like unorganically, like being propped up. I don't think God wanted Israel to look like the Palestinians today, but that only exists because people feel sorry for them. And that's exactly why the state of Israel exists today also. Like, if it wasn't for what happened during World War II, there'd be no state of Israel. Now,
I wanted to jump in there. That's what a lot of Christians get wrong. What Justice said above me. If you look at Matthew, Mark, and Luke, Jesus says, how do you get salvation? You follow the 10 Commandments and you're a good person. Only in John and then in the Paul letters does it say you have to be this, you have to do this, you have to believe that Jesus was this and this and this. Jesus doesn't say that. So I can say here as a Christian, Rabbi Asher, I will see you in heaven. I firmly believe that.
oh well.
Well, and that wasn't addressing you, because also understand,
I know it wasn't. No, I know it wasn't.
My background, just so that you know, my parents are West Indian. My mother, I was born Catholic, raised Baptist. So I was born, raised Christian. After time, my perspectives changed based on my study and my research. And I did research a lot of other things. But also understand, my mother's from Jamaica, my father's from Antigua. A lot of the things I read, being an American citizen, would not have been accessible or would not even have been permitted in my culture. I mean, if you look at Jamaica right now, it's not the best area, but they still got people that are killing homosexuals in the streets.
And
So
that's wrong.
The perspective is that whatever beliefs that they have are still strong enough for them to take a stance on what they deem is right or wrong. You get what I'm saying? Based on their culture. Yeah. So I tell my niece, be careful of trying to debate people when it comes to certain discussions, because every single thing they say isn't wrong. And like what Rabbi said last week, he's not necessarily saying certain things that he's saying for the immediate person that he's debating or talking to, but it's for the people who are looking and listening. Because the moment they sense and smell that you're not being honest or sincere, they're no longer going to take what you're saying serious.
What did you convert to? You said you were a Christian, so I don't. Does that mean you're not anymore?
Right now, I'm just raw. It's been a long last. Wow.
What about
23 years.
Christianity did you not like? Why would?
2011, Well, the thing is when I got serious about Christianity, I was 21, and my upbringing with Christianity had a lot of people either be Seventh-day Adventists or be Catholic or be Baptist or Rasta, just as an example. But what I noticed was that a lot of the things that I saw around me people were doing as what made me question who and what Jesus was or who and what God was by the lifestyles that they lived. And as I got older, I realized it was not God, it was the people. So then I started studying on my own. And when I got serious about church, I was doing whatever I could do to participate, whether it was listening to pastors, going to all the services, going to all the meetings, volunteering, being a Sunday school teacher and everything else like that. But I was also reading. And I was reading 8 hours a day for the first 2 years of my relationship with God. Then it happened. Pastors were talking, and what they were up with what was written in the Bible. And that was where things changed for me. It was like, okay, that the Bible doesn't say that. The Bible doesn't say this. It's not a attack on Jesus. What changed me in my relationship with Jesus was that I no longer believed that he was the Messiah. And I didn't believe that he was the Messiah because of things that were written in the prophets.
But you still do believe that, just to make it simple, he was a great guy, probably somebody we should model our life after?
I believe that he didn't really tell any lies. I believe that his focus was always on us going back to God, which is the principles of the laws of Moses, is to go back to God and to do what God says. I just don't believe that he's the king, the priest, and the foretold bloodline leader of David that everybody's saying, because for me personally, in order for that to be true, the prophecies that people take from that also would mean that the land of Israel will be rebuilt. Everybody by choice would be seeking out Israel for direction and understanding without question. There would be worldwide peace. There will be a literal king in the land who has to deal with the sacrifices on his own, just like Solomon did of his time period, or kind of like the shadow of what Solomon was when Solomon was actually doing what God was telling Solomon to do. That's what I see. I'm not saying that I'm perfectly right and that my perspectives have not changed, because I was also trying to connect with Simcat Israel 2011, 2012, and some of the things that they showed me and said to me, especially being converts themselves that couldn't trace their lines back for 700 years, it kind of like changed my perspective of what people viewed they were supposed to do and how they were supposed to live, as far as what the book said versus the political and the intramarital perspectives of today. For me, I do understand that there are converts, but I also do believe that there's bloodborne. I do believe that at some point in time, that if those prophecies are real, that at some point in time, there has to be a peace that hits this world, that there has to be a king at some point in time that leads his people, that there has to be the word of God has to be on the hearts and the minds of the people and on their tongue at all times. I believe that we're in a state that the prophets said that our hearts are cold, which means they're encased in stone. I believe that our eyes are covered with scales, that even though we think we see, we really don't see. And even though we hear things in our ears, we really don't understand. So, I mean, that's where I am with things right now.
So, in Matthew, there's the virgin birth story. Mark doesn't have it. Luke has it. What I have come, after going back and rereading, especially here lately, what I think would be the best thing is if we just went with the book of Mark and don't need anything else.
Well, a lot of people believe that the book of Matthew is the oldest New Testament book, but I don't touch the virgin birth per se. I think that's for Christians, that's a very serious one, and I would not bring it up to my mother, for example, and I wouldn't even try to argue it out. I tell people simply that at some point we're going to have to focus on the perspective of the holiness aspect of the book, and not necessarily was Jesus born of a virgin, because whether or not he was born of a virgin is not what the book structures as the focus of who a priest is, a prophet is, or a king. If you're going to be a king, certain things fall within that line. If you're going to be a prophet, that means you have to be a bloodborne descendant of Israel, and things of that nature. I don't go into all the other particulars.
Guys, well, let's just pause the talk about Christianity. Well, let's just, just because we're losing the type of viewership.
Sorry.
No, it's cool. It's cool. I mean, we did that portion. Welcome, Richard. What's up?
I'll drop, Rabbi. I'll be back another day. I know we went off topic, but you answered me a lot of questions and you opened my eyes a lot. So I greatly appreciate it, and I apologize for taking it in a direction you probably didn't want to go. But thank you, and I'll be back. Whoever is above me, I'll follow you and keep in touch with you too.
Okay, great. Okay,
Rabbi. Hi, Rabbi. How you doing?
Hey, Richard. What's up?
Well, I being Jewish, I just sometimes contemplate how the Christian philosophy believes that eternal salvation is through, their Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. When you have 6 million people that were killed during the Holocaust, when you have people that lived before Jesus, how is it that, and it's almost, and you have this ongoing belief in the Christian philosophy that if you don't believe that, I mean, literally, it's kind of like this secret that you are kind of an enemy.
Okay.
If you don't believe that.
So,
and I just want to get your perspective on that.
Are you a religious Jew?
No, I'm not a religious Jewish person.
Yeah. So, I mean, respectfully, I don't think that you have the right to comment on anything Christians believe unless you're religious yourself. Because from where you are right now, I mean, I think it would be better for you to become a Christian than remain an atheistical Jew. And I know this sounds weird. I mean, I don't believe in Christianity. However, I view atheism as a lot more dangerous to this planet than Christianity. I rather every atheistical Jew, from Marx to Woody Allen, if they believed in that rendition of Christianity, than if they kept, spewing their real religion, which is leftism. So this is more of a religious show. In terms of dialoguing with Jewish people, I'm Orthodox. So I typically speak to other Orthodox Jews about halakhic issues. I don't really bash Christianity unless a Christian is challenging Orthodoxy or wants to prove that Jesus is the Messiah. I don't believe Jesus is the Messiah. However, I can't imagine where the world would be if all these Christians just became atheist. First, we have to tell the truth and then give our opinion. The reason that we have the luxuries we have on this, in this country that we do today, is because of Christians. It's not because of atheists. So even the support for Israel today, it's mainly from the Christian side. And now, I have no issue you challenging Christianity if you are offering them something in return. I proselytize. I wish every Christian dropped Jesus and became like an Orthodox Jew. It doesn't bother me that they believe in Jesus. I just think the world would be better if we had more Orthodox Jews. I mean, those are selfish pursuits. I mean, better for my kids, better for me. I'll have more kosher food. There'll be more women for my son to marry. But if someone who's an atheist is just going to make fun of religion for the sake of making fun of religion, I mean, I just can't tolerate that. Sorry.
Yeah, I guess maybe I didn't. Maybe my in regard, I'm not an atheist. I believe in God, and I'm not making fun of it.
Yeah, but you're not religious. That's the thing. I mean, so.
Well, I guess so. When you say religious, you're in regards to, from a educational perspective, studying the Torah.
Now, what's the point of ridiculing their ideology? Look, religions have silly ideas across the board. What's the point of attacking their ideology if you yourself, if they can't ask you questions afterwards? Like, I rather them remain Christian than become, pessimistic agnostical Jews, right? It's just, I have to ask what does good instead of what feels good, right? Of course, debating someone logically and overcoming them feels good, but does it actually do good? So I don't believe in the notion of salvation for anyone from that perspective. That only because of some creed, like God's going to let you into heaven. It's silly. Like whether it's believing that Jesus is the Messiah, or because you have a Jewish mother, you'll make it to Olam Haba. Because the idea, pushed by Lubavitch and other groups like that, is that if you're Jewish, we're all going to make it into heaven after we do Gehenna for a maximum of like 12 months. Right? It's silly all around. The question is, who is actually fighting evil in this world? And it's the Christians. Christians, they're fighting for your freedoms, right? I don't know how you see the world, like if you're more on the left and on the right, but I think anyone on the right should be able to see this as a values issue. And we have more in common in terms of values with Christians than we do with atheists or people who challenge Christian ideas. So this is why I'm not anti-Christian. I'm pro-Torah and pro-Jewish. I don't know, like if that makes sense.
That makes sense. Yeah. No, I'm not anti-Christian. I'm asking the question. I don't feel persecuted from Christians. I don't have any issue in regards to, as I said, I had a bar mitzvah. I would be considered more of a I guess you would consider more of a,
I'll give you my opinion. Here, can you ask me the question again? And I'll give you my opinion on it. But I had to put that disclaimer out there first. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, it's all good. No, I appreciate it. The thing is, like I said, I guess the other thing too, Rabbi, let me just be honest with you, because I love this. Orthodox Judaism for me is like a cult, because a lot of the things that and I'm not saying this to be, making, trying to pick a fight, but I'm just saying to you, a lot of the things I see so much hypocrisy with Orthodox Jews.
I agree.
The way in which
I completely agree.
They use profanity like it's coming out of their, guys that I've worked with in business and what have you, biggest shysters, hustlers, not ethical. I'm just telling you.
I agree.
And I'm Jewish.
You're right.
No, so you can't sit here and tell me because I'm not religious that, and I'm just all I'm trying to do is get the answers to the question.
No,
so I can't answer that question.
No. Hold on. Just afterwards, Justice. All right. I completely agree with you, Richard. I completely agree that Orthodoxy, right, for the most part, is a cult. Absolutely. When I say Orthodox, I mean Torah observant. Religion, and you're like Meshuggah is aside. Absolutely. We're definitely a mixed bag. We're talking about ideals here, not the average Jew or the average Christian, by the way. The average person who identifies as Christianity, I don't think lives up to the ideals of Jesus, for the standards of Jesus. But yeah, okay. I misspoke by just saying Orthodoxy. I should have said Torah observant.
Okay.
But yes, this is why if you're going to challenge religion, it has to be offering an alternative to that religion. Some alternative. So you could say rational Judaism, ethical monotheism, something, set a target for them to aspire to, right? To aim at. That's all. Yeah.
No, I agree. The thing is, here's the thing. it's I'm very, very Jewish in the sense of like I'm very proud to be Jewish. I have I've been approached in my life more than once. I'll be 58 in April, where someone's tried to convert me. Okay, and I've never felt like, oh, I'm going to be open to that to even considering that.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying, Rabbi?
but why is that a good thing?
What's that, brother?
Why is that a good thing?
Because it doesn't feel right, man. It's not something
but we're talking about feelings now. I mean, in terms of ethics.
Okay, well, I'm just saying to you,
Hey, look, I think it's silly to be proud to be Jewish. Okay, just because you happen to be born Jewish. This is just my personal opinion.
Okay, yeah, no, I appreciate it.
Like, just like it's silly for someone to be proud to be white or proud to be black, we should be proud of our accomplishments and things that other people could partake in. So if you're proud to be Jewish because, you know what, I wanted to eat that cheeseburger because I wanted to punch that guy in the face, but I didn't, like I was dan l'chaf, I gave him the benefit of the doubt. These are things to be proud of. I've heard it before. I'm proud to be Jewish. Like, that we're in Pride Month now, right? What does that mean? If you're born this, then what's there to be proud of, right? Now, if you distinguish yourself by your actions, that's something to be proud of. But to say that I've heard the arguments, but I'm proud of my Jewishness, even though your Jewishness is not solidified via religion, right? Then that ethically doesn't make sense to me.
So what would you recommend for me to get to search for the answers, like you said, to be able to combat, this kind of, where you can have that conversation, not necessarily combat, but to have that conversation and to further, the fact that, this believing what I believe in, not on feelings, not on, pride, just based on logic, facts, information, what have you.
I think if you begin articulating that your values come from the Bible, that's the first step, right? And that's what Christians essentially do. Theology aside, right? So we're talking about like the founding fathers, early deism, that they separated revelation and miracles from actual ethics, right? The Jefferson Bible stripped away all the miracles and stuff because they wanted to focus on ethics. They believe that God and religion should stand on ethics alone. Realize, who do you have more in common with? Atheists, and I'm not sure if you're on the right or the left, but if you realize, okay, I would rather a Christian live next to me than some Antifa member, let's say, right? And
we're on the right, so
okay, yeah. So theology aside, let's view the world and unite with people via values and not religion first, and realize, so Christianity actually has more in common with Judaism than secularism does. Although secularism, for the most part, is mainly Jewish, right? I mean, most Jews are on the left, right? Most Jews, unlike people I admire like Dennis Prager and Ben Shapiro, most Jews are on the left. Christians are not so bad. What makes them so good? And it's essentially because they followed someone who was Jewish. They followed Jesus, who kept Torah. Theology aside, this is not coronating him as the Messiah or God. You begin to see the value in Christians among you. And then you're thinking like, why would I want to destroy his faith unless I could replace it with a better faith? And that's Judaism, which is the same faith essentially, because what the New Testament brought to the mix was narrative and metaphysics. All the ethics that appear in the New Testament come from the Torah, right? Like all the do's and don'ts, what distinguishes us from the animal came from Moses, right? So then get them to be more Mosaic, and I'll tell you what, then they'll drop Jesus. Because they'll realize, we had the ethical game plan from the beginning. What do we need Jesus for, right? However, if you take a different approach, just destroy their religion, you say how it's completely irrational, they're going to become atheists, and they're going to come persecuting you later. I mean, that's it.
All right. Thank you so much, Rabbi. I really appreciate it. I really enjoyed talking to you.
All right, man. Take it easy. Okay. I know Bree's been like biting her tongue. He's like, let me, get behind me, Satan. Bree, go for it.
Just wanted to, I don't know, he added me. Let me read what he said. When you see everything, it will destroy your spirit, your design to bring forth life. You don't, blah, blah. Okay, yeah. So I don't know what that means. But
So there's a lot of people that's going to be saying all kinds of crazy things in the thread in the word. And it's going to, at some point, it's going to get into you and it's going to start ruffling your feathers. So ignore what you see at the bottom. A lot of them are just talking.
Oh, no, I just told a couple of them that were not very friendly to just back off and leave me alone. Because, I mean, I don't mind conversing, but if you're nasty about it, it's just no point.
Hey,
You know,
Justice.
that's kind of basically what I was trying to say. Even if we disagree, we can always agree to disagree, but it's just how you talk to people.
Are you single, Justice?
I am.
All right. And Bree's single, right? Bree? No? Still? Not? Maybe married? Like, I never asked Bree, like, if, like, no? I'm trying to play matchmaker here.
She said no.
He's always trying to hook me up with
Hey, ain't nothing
someone.
wrong with
Usually
that.
they don't even have pictures, so I'm not going to trust anything.
Well, Justice got a picture there. I mean, Justice has a
Well,
picture.
I have pictures, and you can go ahead and click all my videos. That's fine.
Ooh, you got what I need. I'm telling you, Bree. This could be God. This could be God. It's not a coincidence. It's not a look. You're right on top of him, right? I mean, have you seen it?
Asher, that sounded very unkosher.
No, that's not what I meant. That's not what I meant. You know what I mean? I mean, because you're like a woman who's a little outspoken, you know, and then Justice will let you say what you got to say, but at the end, we'll kind of square you away, you know. So,
Oh my God!
all right.
Rabbi.
Can you at least give it a try? Like, kind of like just, I mean, drop like a DM, like, hey, what's up? Hey, Justice,
I
what
tried
state
to
do you live
follow
in?
her just now. Huh?
What state are you in?
I'm in Connecticut.
Ah, man, opposites. I mean, it's gonna be like You've Got Mail, because she's in LA. All right, that's a long
Where
flight.
she live? California?
Yeah,
I'm in LA.
Ah,
that's what's up.
I hear you.
All right.
Well, at least you got better weather.
Yeah, it's nice.
Come on, Justice, keep it going. Keep
Hey,
it going.
you can always unfollow me later.
Okay, we'll see. You up here denouncing Jesus. I don't know about that. I don't know how that's going to work.
Well, you'll be surprised. I might know a lot more about Jesus than most people do, regardless of whether or not I believe that he's God.
Okay, well.
You can challenge me on it.
Afterwards, you guys could go to dinner and talk about it. All right.
Hey, you got mail.
Woo! That's game. That's game, Bree. Come on.
We'll see.
Your mom will be happy since you're Christian.
Ooh.
Oh.
All right.
No.
All right. All right. So let's leave it at that. All right, guys. Just talk to each other, okay? Anyways, bigoted uncle, or is that bigoted
Uncle, yeah.
Oh, uncle. Okay, my bad. All right. Tell us about yourself. Are you a Christian, Muslim, Puerto Rican?
I'm an atheist, actually.
Ah, interesting.
Yeah. But
Is that your picture?
yes, in a way, it's. But I aged it with those face apps.
Ah, I mean,
Yeah.
okay, all right. So we'll find someone for you also. Maybe the colony is a female. All right. So, are you an atheist or an agnostic?
I like to say both when I'm asked those questions, in the sense that the traditional drill: agnostic is knowing, atheist is believing, blah blah. In that case, yeah.
So that means that you're more of a pessimistic agnostic.
Pessimistic, agnostic? No. Okay, so when I say the drill, I mean that agnostic means I know. So for sure, I don't know that there's a God, so I'm agnostic. And theist or atheist means I believe or I don't believe, and therefore I don't believe. So I don't believe and I don't know there's a God. So I'm agnostic and I'm an atheist.
Okay, so it seems like atheist means that you've come to a conclusion.
In terms of belief, that's right.
Correct. Instead of
Not
remaining,
knowing.
right?
Belief.
Instead of remaining in the not knowing camp.
Yeah, exactly. So agnosticism would be the knowing camp. Like, I think there's God, right? I think. I might be wrong. Whereas I don't know that,
Right.
So you're agnostic, I'm an agnostic.
So I proudly identify as an optimistic agnostic. And I think that
that makes sense still.
Yeah, well, most
so you can call me a pessimist.
Pessimistic agnostic.
Yeah.
You know, which typically translates.
No, pessimistic Gnostic. I'm pessimistic about knowing.
About even knowing, right? So okay, yeah.
You can't have the two double negatives, right? A pessimistic,
right.
agnostic. Then I'm
right. I mean, you caught me on that one. Right. I mean, you're a pessimistic Gnostic. You know, so from my perspective, it does optimistic agnostic. You know, so then I would be an optimistic Gnostic, technically.
If you're an optimist Gnostic, which means you know already, so there's no need to be optimistic, right? But you think you know, therefore you're an optimistic agnostic.
Right. Okay. You know, so then I'm still an optimistic agnostic.
That's right.
No,
That's
well,
right.
I mean, that could also make you a pessimistic agnostic if you're just going by the adjective itself, if you're going by the title, yes. If you're going by the descriptive term, then no. Just because agnostic has come to mean not knowing. You know, so you're optimistic. No, you're right. So it is. Like you're a pessimistic Gnostic. Absolutely right. Yeah. So I think all healthy religious people should identify as optimistic agnostics, because you can't prove that God exists, just like you can't prove he doesn't exist. There's evidence on both sides. Good evidence on both sides. Now, this is putting aside people who've had God appear to them, you know, things that only speak to them. I'm not speaking for those people, but for the average person who comes to the belief in God because of what they read in the Bible, I think that we would want God to be true, right? But we can't prove that it's true. However, what we could prove is the effect of believing in a God, the effect that has in someone's lives.
Yeah.
That is something that could be measured. It seems that people who believe in God typically, not always, live better lives. They volunteer more time. They seem more hopeful versus nihilism, which would obviously be the opposite of that. Yeah. So this is why I really hope that there is a God. And it's not just believing in God itself doesn't make you any more or less moral. It's believing in the God of the Bible, meaning the God that gave us a moral code to aspire to. If that moral code wasn't there, then there's no point in saying I believe in God. There's many people who say I believe in God, but it really matters what God you believe in. I mean, your God can make you behave worse than someone who doesn't believe in God. So my advocacy is for the God in the Bible.
Yeah, exactly. And mine is for not that God, if I can put it in that lazy way.
So what alternative? I mean, you need some alternative. I mean, assuming we're playing the God game.
I do have an alternative. Besides religion or the God of the Bible, any God for that matter. You know what I mean? I do have my own alternative. And my alternative rests within the natural world.
Yeah.
You know, we are animals, we are mammals, we give birth to live young, they suck, we suckle. You know, so yeah, that's where my morals come from.
But for yourself. Yeah, but what's your universal alternative? Because everything I said was in terms of some universal vision for the world that the vast majority of people behaved in a certain way, the world will move forward. What's your universal alternative? Not for yourself. I mean, you could be the exception and you could be fully more ethical than the average religious person, right? By believing that nature is your criteria. But for everybody else, what would be your alternative instead of the God of the Bible?
So the first thing we'd need to accept for everybody else, including myself, to be honest, is that I will eat you or you will eat me as living creatures, right? Plants, animals, whatever. That's going to happen. Okay. As we do this eating of each other as living creatures on this planet, we could do it less sadistically, right? You know how vegans are anti the way we cull chickens or baby male chicks that don't make it to be brooders and so on, right? So we could do it more ethically because we are conscious of the fact that other animals suffer. I don't think a virus is conscious that you suffer, so it seems unethical. Or cancer. Cancer is not an animal, but the idea should stay. That cancer might violently attack you, but it's not conscious that you are suffering and is enjoying that attack. So as humans, we must not hurt each other would be the universal drive. because we're going to, but let's try our best not to hurt each other as much.
So that's viable. I mean, it's a viable alternative. The question is, how many people could really make sense of that logically? I mean, the average person walking around, this is why we're still in the realm of agnosticism, meaning forget about proving that God exists. Let's see what actually works versus what doesn't work. Because in life, it's typically not between what's horrific and what's utopian, but between what's good and what's better, right? Better for the world. I like this idea. The question is, how can you make it work? When other, let's say, atheistical pursuits, French Revolution, the Soviet Union, it seems like every attempt to in some way reinvent the standard or the wheel ethically has failed. I mean, for the most part.
I'm going to sell myself out here and say I heard a conversation that you had with somebody else about the Russian Revolution and so on, and Mao Zedong, whatever. I'm adding my own names, but my idea was that I've heard you talk to somebody else about all these other things and ascribing them to being atheist, right? And in that discussion, I thought maybe, I could be wrong, but I thought maybe you think that because somebody's atheist, they turn out like Hitler, whereas anyone can turn out like Hitler, whether they're atheist or not, right? So I don't see what atheism has to do with anything to do with Stalin or, Russia, the USSR, or anything like that. Anyone could have done that.
No, correct. Anyone. Yeah, we're talking about movements. For sure, I respect Ayn Rand. Ayn Rand, full atheist, but on the right. What I consider the religion of atheism is leftism. This is why I gave the examples of Cambodia, Russia, Cuba, China, right? All left-wing pursuits. Leftism is the religion of atheism for the most part. There are exceptions, like I just said, there's some atheists that are on the right, just like there's some Christians who aren't religious, right? But they're the exception to the rule. So, as a whole, I'm not saying atheist. You're an atheist, and I believe that you're an ethical person. However, how do we make it stick globally? How could, more than not, how can we assure that the world's going to move
in that direction?
Right, in a more ethical direction than not.
Yeah. So with atheism, it's a bit more difficult because we all human beings of all time, as we've known, have always got an inclination to create a God. It seems like we cannot avoid creating a God, We've created sun gods, we've created thunder gods, we've created, mythical gods, all sorts of things, right? It seems like it's within our genes. I'm exaggerating here, but that's not the case. It seems like it's built within us deeply to create a God. Now, atheism allows you to step over that limitation. And once you step over it, you don't feel the need to make a religion, so to speak, that you keep calling atheism a religion. There's no religion in atheism. So once you overstep the idea that I know my mind wants me to create a God, right? But I don't accept it. And then you step into atheism. All of a sudden, you're able to do those things. Be kind, be nice, greet, respect your elders, whatever, in a respectful way, without a drive of a universal thing. With the finite knowledge that you will die on this earth and that'll be it, you still treat people nicely because you've escaped that orbit that is built within you to believe in a God.
Yeah, but from a personal perspective, macro versus micro, and I'm just sticking to the macro. I acknowledge there's some crappy religious people, and again, I acknowledge there's some beautiful atheist people, but overall, for the average person, would you encourage an atheistical coexistence, or say, no, the average person really can adopt, the difficult or complicated arguments I'm putting forward of grassroots ethics, right? So it's probably better for them to adhere to biblical ethics for the sake of world peace, let's say.
In terms of what you've seen in history, the biblical ethics have not come with world peace at all. So no, I wouldn't push for that because I know the power of controlling people, right? And making people believe in something and then rally behind you and go out there and do the worst. Mm-hmm. So once you've got that driving ideology that we are right, you can manipulate people into anything. So no, I wouldn't go for that.
Yeah.
Especially knowing what Christianity and the Islamic religions and so on have done in the past.
Can I ask an off-subject question?
Yeah.
What's your perspective about climate change?
Me?
No, bigoted uncle.
I believe that climate change, naturally, whether we're here or not, they change. I don't know if I'm answering you, sorry.
Yeah, no, it's a...
Well, the topic of climate change, the public thought process and description of climate change. What do you believe?
No.
about
I
it?
mean, let's not... I mean, he gave...
Well, no, there's a method to my madness. Is not to get too far off base, but
Yeah, but it sounds like he doesn't believe it's an
Or do
existential
you mean
threat.
that it's man-made?
no. Do you believe in the science of climate change?
Yeah, of course. I believe in ice ages. I believe in meteoritic strikes that killed dinosaurs. I believe in supernovas that have killed megafauna. I believe the climate will change with certain impact.
How does the current ideology of climate change alter world peace today?
I don't know what the current ideology of climate change is, sorry. Again, I asked you if you meant that it's man-made, and you said no,
Guys.
that's the only one I know. So I don't know which other one there is.
Okay, well, yeah, then it would be that. These days we talk about the destruction of the ozone layer, the change of the climate and temperature, rains in areas where it should not rain, and floods and things of that nature. How does everybody's view about climate change bring world peace?
It doesn't. In fact, if anything, it's going to bring war.
Do you think that there might be some scientific perspectives that exist out there that cause strife between other scientists?
Do I think that there are scientific perspectives out there that cause strife in other scientists? Yes.
So, based on that understanding, could it not be construed that the belief in atheism doesn't really change much versus
Atheism is not a belief.
a God existing?
Atheism is not a belief.
It is a belief because you would have to have a theory of or a lifestyle of.
Hello? You broke up. I didn't hear.
Yeah, let me hop into this. I mean, I think, okay. So I believe that atheism, like for the most part today, is a belief. Most atheism today is not real true atheism. It's really anti, some Judeo-Christian perspective. That's typically what atheists, what the average atheist believes in, which is what equals leftism. This is why, I'm not talking about, being religious doesn't always equal, someone being ethical.
Okay, but if you look at my profile, you'll see that I ask about proof of supernatural power. So my focus as an African is I'm more concerned about the traditional Sangoma, witchcraft, witch doctor, as you might call it in the Western world. I'm not so much concerned about the Judeo-Christian God at all, actually.
Yeah, so the vast majority of individuals...
So that blows your theory out the water. Of course, I'm concerned about anything supernatural. And my main concern as an African is the African one.
Yeah, no, but my position here is not to promote the supernatural, by the way. I'm promoting individual moral training. This is why...
No, you misheard, sorry. I'm saying, you saying that atheism today is not what it used to be. It's just about being against the Judeo-Christian God, right? And I'm saying I'm living proof that that's not my concern. It's actually my bio.
No, I get.
Like I changed my bio. Yeah, so it's not that for me. My atheism is about fighting anything that is supernatural.
Yeah.
I'm not saying your God is.
So you're the exception to the rule. Most atheists. I'm just saying that most atheists are just anti-Christian, in the vast majority of cases, and most atheists, from that perspective, are wounded theists. It seems like people like Christopher Hitchens, that he has to go out of his way to, in some way, destroy the image of a good God in the mind of any theist. He has a proclivity of that, towards that.
Yeah, and I think maybe it's because if we use names now, the Richard Dawkins of this world grew up around Christianity and not so much about the witchcraft. So the same atheistic worldview makes him behave one way and makes me behave the other way, and therefore it makes the atheism not a belief. Because if it was, we'd be behaving the same way.
Yeah. Well,
I've talked to a lot of atheists, unfortunately, on this site, and most of them claim to be former Christians, and it's always against Christianity. Most of them are not just in general against something; they're against Christians. The majority.
Yeah, because that's the environment in which they grew up, right?
Yeah.
Those that grew up Muslim are against the Muslim God.
Yeah, so you're a red herring, essentially. I mean, you're just like a rare exception, like of an atheist, which is fine. You know, I typically try to focus on the macro, on the average atheist versus the average theist, on who actually does better on this planet. And I'm not in any way really endorsing Islam from that perspective, although I think it's better for people to become Muslim than remain atheists. Again, not from your perspective, but from the idea that they're going to fight or in some way reinvent where their society's values actually come from. Because I think an honest atheist should at least be able to pay tribute to the fact that the reason their society moves forward ethically to any extent is because of Judeo-Christian values compared to others. And in terms of it being, let's say, a numbers game, right? But again, you know, focusing on the macro. Look, the God you don't believe in, I also don't believe in. I just came back from India. I could say that for at least a billion other people. But in terms of what actually does good, instead of just sounding good, I think I'd push from the Jew. Yes, I mean, I would.
I mean, on the macro scale. Sorry, Justice.
Are you moving closer to the plants?
Yeah. Oh, okay. On the macro scale, I cannot speak for, right? But every single atheist, I'm not saying some or some, not every single one that I've talked to, and I've talked to a lot, are not, or they don't have a hard-on for the God of Abraham, so to speak, right? The Abrahamic religion. Their concern, the most of them that I understand, is a very simple statement, which is the proof of any God is very poor. For them, the proof of any God is very poor. It doesn't matter which one it is.
Yeah, and also
Thor,
like
whatever, right? It's not targeted at the God of Abraham.
Yeah. So I mean, I think you probably meant to say the evidence. Just because there's no proof for God, or I mean, the proof for there not being a God is quite poor. Also, dark matter, the Big Bang.
The proof, or I meant to say the evidence is poor. I don't know if I said that. Sorry.
Yeah. So that's why, for sure. I mean, either way is poor, but that we're discussing that we're approaching this from two different camps. I don't view your ideology as detrimental to society, because I don't see you in any way trying to proselytize this idea, right? I'm pretty sure you would rather a child in modern day America grow up with a solid sense of biblical values and then in some way get their morality from television, right?
If you nitpick the biblical values, not all of them, you have to pick.
No, well, things that but the simple fact that they're called values is because we value them today. That means,
but we value them as well as Christians.
That's fine.
They do it as atheists. Sorry, they do it unto others as you will be done unto you. Was my opening line, which is try not to do as much harm as possible.
So, what ethical value do you disagree with Christians on?
No, you said, sorry, maybe I misunderstood you. I took the whole of Christianity, including the Leviticus books. I don't want them to have that in their minds.
So I was just referring to the morals and the ethics.
Not Christianity, God, including the Leviticus books. But Christianity, I don't think those stand out much. And they are there, the books about slavery and how you must respect your masters, but I don't think they stand out much in modern day America, as you say.
Do you live in Africa or in America?
I live both in Africa and in Europe.
Would you feel safer in terms of your child's moral development to put him in a religious school, even though you're not convinced that God exists, or you're convinced that he doesn't exist, than putting him in a public school? In Europe or in America?
Public school in Europe is perfectly fine.
Mm-hmm.
I'd rather them not go to the religious one, because Okay, yeah, I've answered you. Sorry, you didn't answer it because.
Yeah. So in terms of specifics, let's say, would you say that
secular school, right? When you say public school.
Yeah, sure, secular school.
Yeah, secular for sure.
Would you say that regarding young ladies, the chances of them remaining chaste in a secular school like versus a religious school are the same?
No, I think they're likely to remain chaste in a religious school.
In terms of violence and theft, let's say, I mean, actually stealing from someone, would you say that they're more likely to delve into the destruction of private property, like taking things that don't belong to them if they belong to a religious school or a secular school?
Definitely a secular school.
So what advantage, ethical advantage,
does a secular school have?
Yes.
It doesn't lead you to become an adult that is so close-minded that you cannot even discuss certain issues because it goes against your religion.
No, this is why I gave the example. Would you, as an atheist, put your child in this, knowing that child is going to go home to you anyways, and you're going to tell them, you know what, when you get old enough, you're going to figure this out on your own. However, I'm going to equip you with some sense of poor man's philosophy here. I'm going to equip you at least with basic tools of morality to give you like a leg up in life, right? A nudge forward in life, like versus a kid who in some way is subject to the ethical fads of the time.
Okay, so what you were asking me was which one is more likely to, and I answered your questions directly according to that.
I started off by saying, would you feel safer, right?
Yeah,
for your child's ethical development.
Yeah,
for your child's ethical development, to place your kid in a secular school like or a religious school. You said secular school, and I just gave you examples. So can you give me an example where the ethical school, at least till the kid turns 18, right, where a child would fare better in such would in some way fare better in such a school ethically than the religious one?
But I just did, right? So you're right. You did say Christian or secular. I said secular. Then you said theft. I said Christian. Then you said stay a virgin. I said Christian, right? So I'm with you. We were together on this conversation. What I'm saying is that what the Christian school does over that period until they're 18 is that it stifles the mind to have the ability to think outside the box. And the things that you're afraid of in the secular, the virginity, the whatever, I can control from home already and not have that happen. So you can have a good secular school where kids are not doing any of these violent things that you're referring to, right? So I'm saying that it's not 100% guaranteed that every secular school will result in an environment that's unsafe with violence and burning and looting and virginity lost or whatever. That's the extremest of all examples. Most secular schools would just be run of the mill. But I can guarantee you the religious school will make sure that my child cannot think outside the box. Because that's what religion does to your mind.
Yeah, because like during the lockdown, even with the example that the other guest mentioned of climate change, in terms of believing that climate change is an existential threat to humanity, believing that booster shots help, wearing a mask helps, even believing that the virus doesn't spread, if you're protesting against racism, gender affirming care, these are all left-wing, essentially secular pursuits, which is what's taught in secular societies. And the only people in society that we see in the vast majority of cases, protesting and thinking on their own and for themselves seem to be those with a religious background, not those with an atheistical one.
Yeah. So until you come to a point where I say, just imagine for a second there is no God, and they say, how dare you insult my God? Like they can't even do thought experiments because of that fear of hell or whatever it is that's hanging over the neck.
Yes, we're not talking about that type of kid, because I said your kid. Meaning that your kid would come home to you.
My kid in a Christian school will turn out like that.
You think so?
Because I see it all the time.
Okay.
Good Christian schools, not bad Christian schools.
So I think what you're describing happens to any kids who are ultimately aren't homeschooled. There's children.
No. They can be secular schooled and not have that God will punish me if I masturbate.
No, but there's other things, right? Okay, so you're talking about again, you're talking about the downside of not homeschooling your kid. I mean, there's many kids who go to public school who no longer talk to their parents, let's say, or the school takes it upon themselves to in some way help the child transition secretly without you. There's clearly more loss on a grand scale if you throw your kid in a secular pool than in a religious pool. And I get you. In terms of theology, you don't believe in God. If he ends up believing in God, that's going to frustrate you. I think, that being said, giving your child a religious foundation is a lot more palatable than giving him a secular one, where, I mean, at least religious kids have a principle of honoring their parents. What principles do secularists have, but don't trust anyone like over 35, right? I mean, well, let's take extremes here.
I think that's your opinion, right?
No, for sure, it's my opinion, for sure.
Yeah, because the reason why I answered you honestly was because I wanted to make sure that you don't feel like I'm dodging you, right? So I said to you, yes, the Christian school is better for this, that, and the other. But I did say at the end, overall, the secular school is better because what you are afraid of in the secular school is not as prominent as you make it out to be. What I'm afraid of in the Christian school is almost a 99% guarantee that it will occur. Do you see the difference, right? I'm not saying the child is safer in a secular school. They are much worse off in a secular school, but they've moved from 0 violence in the Christian school to 5 violence in a secular school. You make it sound like they've moved to 100 violence in a secular school. You know what I mean? Out of 100 out of 100, right? You make it sound like the extreme is guaranteed in a secular school, whereas I'm saying the extreme that you're afraid of, I'm not as afraid of in a secular school, but definitely, I mean, I have a friend here. Let me check if they're still here. I'm just going to talk about them so that they don't feel like I'm talking. Yeah, they're here. They couldn't even fathom having a conversation about witchcraft. When we said, come on, let's talk about witchcraft. Is it real? Is it not real? Please stop. Don't do this on my life. This is terrible. The fact that the brain has been reduced to that it's afraid. And I know you and I can have the conversation, but they've been so Christianized that they're even afraid to have a conversation about witchcraft because God is going to judge them one day, is what I'm afraid of. To me, that's a pretty not work.
Can I say something? Because y'all been talking for a while. Yeah. I wanted to say something. In America, most of the time, people go to secular schools. I mean, I didn't go to a Christian school. I don't know very many people that did. Usually they're private schools. So, I mean, bottom line, if you don't want your child at a Christian school, just send them to a public school or another school. If you don't want to be a Christian, don't be one. If you don't want to be in Judaism, don't do it. Like, everybody has freedom to choose what they want to do or not do. The issue I have is that people who are against Christianity, usually, because I don't see a lot of people, even, I mean, I guess some people do attack Judaism, but if you don't want to be a Christian, just don't be one. I mean, like, I think people are so nosy. They don't like that Christians have the choice to be a Christian. If you don't want to be a Christian, don't be one and leave us alone. I think that's the bottom line.
Yeah, that's not the bottom line on this show. We're talking about macro issues. What would be better for the vast majority of people to do? And him and I mean, know where we differ. Like, he thinks that in the long run, it's going to be worth grows up with a religious education, right? Then it's just growing up with no sense of God in their life. And I disagree. And I give examples like walking. The average child who takes their professors literally, basically, those who are the most studious are the most easily indoctrinated. Like I mentioned, walking around thinking that climate change is an existential threat. That you know.
Bozen, don't address me unless you're gonna hop in the box.
All right. Just
you're
talk to them.
Leave me alone, okay? With a fake profile.
All right.
The climate change, whether it's man-made or not, has shown that it is a existential crisis for some people already.
No, whether it's true or not, I mean, you don't have to argue it. Like, I believe, like you, that this world heats and cools. You know, in terms of actually replacing one existential threat, i.e. not believing in Jesus and ending up in hell, with the idea that if we don't all wear a mask, the world is going to cease to exist, or that a man who identifies as a woman is an actual woman, the core belief that men could menstruate, right? The idea that men should be allowed to compete in women's sports. these are core beliefs of the left today. I'm not saying you believe them. I'm saying you're just like most religious people don't automatically start condemning everyone who doesn't behave like they do to hell, right? For the most part, I would see leftism as more of a toxic ideology than modern day religiosity, i.e. biblically based modern day religiosity. I see more kids coming out of religious schools more fair and balanced, right? This is why it seems to me that religious people are not so quick to be scared into submission by big government. For some reason, people who grew up in secular institutions want big government. They trust big government. You know, they want more regulation. You know, it seems like one is more rational than the other, and it's quite baffling. You know, from that perspective, one grows up with biblical stories, right? And now we're not talking about the ethics, stories that talk about an invisible God, and at the end, these individuals that are quicker to defy authoritarianism, you know, any sort of dictator. They put their lives on the line, you know, for standing, you know, for things that don't make them popular, while the other one just submits. I don't know why. What do you think?
So from my perspective, and maybe we've dragged this out long enough. Of course, I'm still here, but some people are saying they want to come up. From my perspective, I hear what you're saying. I don't necessarily agree, because I do speak with atheists. You know, I do talk to them, and some of them are this millennial, you know, everybody's a male or everybody's a female, whatever kind of view. Some are for climate change, some are not. We're just totally different in my groups, right? So you saying you've got a view where all atheists are left-wing. I'm saying I don't know about that. All the ones I know are all over the place based on whatever issue you're putting in front of them. But the key thing I wanted to share there, if I can just, from my side, end on that, is if you come with the evidence that masks don't help, I will take off my mask. But if I told a child that if you take off your mask, you go to hell, and then somebody tells them masks don't help, they'll keep the mask on. That's the biggest problem I have with religion, is that it's fixed and it's set. It will not allow you to go against the religion set. Whereas with people like me who are open to new evidence, if masks don't help, I take them off. And I'm saying that because I took off the masks.
No, I get it.
And
but for the most part.
But what I'm saying is, but here's a problem. You didn't hear my first part, is that all the atheists I hang around with are like that as well. You talking about another group that I'm not aware of. Every single atheist, and I hang around with a lot because we're atheists, you know, we think the same way. We disagree amongst ourselves. In fact, there's a friend of mine who I say, what kind of person are you that you don't have any, I don't want to say will, but like any drive to be good, to be whatever. He's saying whatever falls in front of me, falls in front of me. Right? But he's still an atheist. He's not a theist.
No, I get it.
He's an atheist. But for me, I'm like, no, you don't live like that. You must love and care and, you know, look after
You're a
the
rare
weak
breed.
and so on.
This is why, I mean, I started off like focusing on the macro. I don't know many atheists who think like you do, but I did mention a few conservative ones. I mentioned Ayn Rand, for example. Like, you don't have to be religious, like, in order to be on the right path. You know, however, in the vast majority of cases, those shoving down government mandates down our throat, we're atheists, not religious people. Those violating, you know, I mean, throughout history, dictators, right, but the abolitionists that were religious, right? I mean, the outliers, for the most part, have been religious, not atheistical, right? So I you know, anyways, that's where it is.
Let me jump in quickly, because I'm an atheist, and I would say I'm a right-wing atheist, and I want to just actually back up exactly what you were saying. Within my own community, I actually grew up Jewish, religiously Jewish, and Orthodox, and I among the ex-Jewish community, especially on Reddit, but even in real life, and among all the atheist subreddits, the atheist discords, and I actually see exactly what you were saying. From what I see, most people are not capable of not having a religion. So they leave the religion not for intellectual reasons, but due to trauma. Obviously, there's some intellectualism involved, right? But generally, because of that, they have to replace it with another religion. And most of the time, bigoted, I don't know what you're talking about. I literally see the vast majority of these atheists will replace it with leftism, will replace it with the evil patriarchy trying to harm all of us, right? Climate change being existential threat. And exactly what you were saying with the mask is so false. There is zero rationality. A post that I saw very recently in the ex-Jewish subreddit, right? It was literally, how come all these evil religious people wearing masks? This is again 3 weeks ago, right? Nobody wears masks anymore. He said he wore a mask, and you see all these stupid religious Jews not wearing their masks, and he says, like, how do you guys also experience this as a atheist, having to watch all these religious people who don't wear masks? And I literally did this exact comment. I'm like, you're approaching this as a religious issue. You're replacing one religion with another religion. And every other ex-Jew in the comments was sympathizing with him, saying how I'm crazy. And the truth is that very few people leave religion for purely intellectual reasons. I'm one of them. I have some friends. And you might be as well. Those are the very rare people. It takes a certain breed of person to be able to really handle not having any meaning or purpose in their life and be able to live like that and accept that. Most people need that meaning. They need that purpose. They lose the religion, replace it with something just as extreme, which is very modern day radical leftism.
Wow. David, thank you. That was phenomenal, and I appreciate your contribution.
As Courtney says it must be true. Because Courtney is on top of it.
Well, let me explain. I find his honesty to be a breath of fresh air, because a lot of people will tell you, no, I left for intellectual reasons. Very few people leave for intellectual reasons. Very few. And typically when they do, they fall into what is commonly referred to as being like philosophy bros, right? So they leave for intellectual reasons and they go into philosophy. I'm sorry?
That was spot on.
Yeah, so they will leave, and then when they want to pursue intellectual conversation, they go into philosophy. And as we all know, philosophy is one of those things that's never ending, right? You're going to find a fallacy for everything, and then you're going to rationalize, and that's the reason I think, therefore I am. So it's a constant back and forth, and you never actually get down to anything solid and concrete that you can sink your teeth in. So I don't know who it was Bigoted, I believe, did I say that right? Bigoted, yeah. That made the statement, religion is set. And I think that's the number one problem, right? That religion is set, and it's not a do without will mentality, right? There's a set of standard rules that apply, and they don't shift and they don't change for the vast majority of religions, right? Especially that of the Abrahamic religion. And so what I find people are kicking against is the trauma, as David said, which is 100% true. And then secondary, they typically don't like the rules of engagement of said God. And so they say, okay, I found a trauma that I'm feeling, and I don't know how to solve this trauma. They seek other people with the same traumas, which is why you tend to fall into two different categories once you become an atheist, right? You have the atheists that are straight secular. I am completely irreligious. I left for an intellectual pursuit because I didn't want someone to cause me to stammer and lose my way in religion, right? And I don't want to feel like I'm left in a box. I want to think outside the box. But for some reason, they didn't know that they could do that while being in religion. Okay, there's one. And then the other side is, I'm spiritual, I'm not religious. You find the communities that develop out of this are like New Age people, where they say, I'm atheist, but I love being in connection with the earth, and I do like grounding, and I take shrooms and drugs to heighten my life and experience. So they're experiential seekers. And as David said, there are very few people that can leave the realm of religion and see that there's nothing in life that matters, right? There's nothing that is calling them to a greater, higher achievement. And David, I think you hit it right on the nail on the head, because very few people can truly become no spirituality whatsoever. Very few people can do that. And I think this is one of my arguments for the existence of a God, that the vast majority of humanity must and does seek out God with the natural antenna that he gave us. But thank you so much for your honesty. Thank you very much.
So then I want to say, like, I obviously would disagree with some of your conclusions, right? I don't think that's evidence for a God, but like, even myself, I really did not leave for any animosity. I had a great experience with religion. I had a great family, still extremely close with my family, right? And I never hated my religion and never had an issue with it. I kept halacha to the max. To me, it was purely intellectual. I just stopped believing in the falsified. I stopped being the truth of it. And I think that for me, I was in a unique place where instead of having to just throw away my whole religion and go radically to the opposite extreme, which happens a lot, I was able to really just try to evaluate all of my beliefs and see which ones I want to keep, which ones I don't want to keep, right? And now I still believe there's so much beauty and truth to Judaism, to all religions, especially about how they approach, I would say, sexual morality. I personally see that is a lot of truth to it, and there's a lot of benefits to it. Even if you don't believe it's objectively true in the deistic sense or in the theistic sense, it's true in the practical sense and does lead to happier, better lives. And that's why you see a lot of religious people in traditional marriages using traditional gender roles to live happier lives. And I think the point is here is this: people do feel a need to virtue signal. People that the strongest need is actually to feel better about yourself. And this is why they do the whole mask thing, right? Even LGBTQ making it such an issue is because and making all these random terminology that's now like sacrilege. Like I asked my other atheist, my another brother, mine also went off. And he's a typical, like, very extreme, a lot of trauma, went to the left. And I asked him, he was so against slurs. I'm like, let's say you're in a dark room by yourself, and and nobody will ever hear you or know whether you said anything. Is it okay to say racial slur? He's like, what do you mean? Of course not. I'm like, wait a second, think about that. That is the same thing as a religion. You're saying it does not harm anybody. It's in a dark room. Nobody will know, right? It's just a bunch of syllables on words that have no objective meaning. And you're saying it's wrong to say it, right?
Wait, I have a question. Did you say racial slurs?
Any bad word, even look, let's say an inappropriate word, right? Choose your example, a very harmful, scary, taboo word. Right. A racial slur is the biggest example because it only harms somebody if you're saying it to somebody, and that's when it's
wrong. but that's not a very good argument. Come on now.
He's using that in light of what people would consider to be immoral. Don't say, don't do.
Well, no, that's not my point. I'm like, that's not. I get what he's trying to say, but that's not a very good argument.
Hey, look, let me clarify. Like, it's never okay to say a racial slur to somebody ever. That would get offended because you're causing them pain, suffering. There's a lot of historical problems with the slur that can cause a lot of harm to people, right? What I'm talking about is saying it in a dark room with the lights off. Nobody will ever know that you said it. Did you do a morally wrong action by saying it? And anybody who says yes, I see them as delusional. You are not hurting anybody.
But I guess my question is, why use that as an example of all the examples you could give? Why that?
I'll tell you exactly why, Bree, because that is the textbook example of the way for people to feel better about themselves by keeping and making new things considered slurs. For example, the R slur, right? REATARD. I'm not going to say it. However, that slur it just literally means below 70 IQ. There's no difference between that word and the word idiot. However, what they do is they can creating new words that are taboo in order that they don't see the words and you do, and therefore they feel morally better about themselves because they're part of this group that does not say these words. And my point is they treat it as almost a religious right. Like, I don't say these words. And even in a dark room alone, they think it's still morally wrong to say this, even though they are completely atheistic. And I think my point is these people cannot handle not having a religion. They replace their religion of Judaism, Christianity, Islam with their new religion of, I guess, some sort of leftism, some sort of virtue signaling leftism. And I think the pointer is this. I also agree with Courtney fully, but there's very few people, and I have one or two friends like this, and most of my atheist friends are not like this. They're very leftist. They're very extreme in just other directions. I know one or two people out of the hundreds of people I know that are really able to just sit back from it all and approach things from an objective sense and not get caught up in what should be all these morals. That's all I'm saying.
That's so true. I'm so sorry. It is such a refreshing thing to hear because I'm in conversation with atheists all the time on Clubhouse. And I cannot tell you how many times there's virtue signaling where we explicitly know that this person is a male but prefers to be called a she. And it's if you were to talk to this person, it absolutely sounds like a male, completely. And this person acknowledges that they've transitioned. And it's a constant virtue signaling. And I'm you do understand that you've literally only replaced religion, which teaches you to be a specific way towards the vast majority of humanity, which is outside of the color of their skin, the height, or how much they weigh and things like that. But now you've swung on all the way to the left, which now is teaching you to be a specific bigoted way towards the right side and be, patting the people on the back on the left side. So, it's so refreshing because there's not a whole lot of atheists that lean towards the right that were once religious and especially Jewish. So you're like this unicorn. So thank you for speaking because
I appreciate that. And we do exist, but it's more real. I have other friends that are similar because obviously we gravitate towards these people. There's a certain intellectual mind you can appreciate.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah, no, so I agree completely. Do you mind if I ask you? You said it was. So, were you from?
New York area.
No, from
you.
Oh, was I from? Yeah, I was very
From.
from. I was yeshivish, yeah.
Okay, so when you say that it was
Regular yeshiva, a boys yeshiva. I wasn't modern Orthodox. I guess I won't say Haredi. But yeah, like I would say my family started out more yeshivish, and like as like some of the kids got smartphones, we're a little bit more chilled yeshivish, but we're still very yeshivish, my family.
Gotcha. So when you say it was purely intellectual, that is there a mentality that you could resonate with, that it got to a point to where you felt like you felt slightly in bondage by specific things of rules, and you kind of took on the mindset of do what thou wilt, because you made a mention of like you took what was good and conducive for yourself and then went into your atheistic mindset? Is that a true statement?
No, I don't think that's really fair to say, because I really genuinely believed in Hashem, and I believed in the Torah Mizina. I really believed in that, and I followed religion to a T. I was literally I wasn't like a crazy machmir, but I knew halacha. Like I'm a smart guy. I know halacha well, right? Like you could ask me any halacha, I'll be able to tell you the sugya instantly. And people would come to me with halacha shalas, and they still do, right? Because not everyone knows. Like some of my friends, I'm not so open with everybody. That I'm like my family knows, but a lot of my close friends, not everyone knows. And like I saw people ask me halacha shalas, and I was never like a crazy machmir. I was just like a regular, normal yeshivish guy. And what happened is I just stopped believing in Hashem, right? I just started, I had friends who would talk philosophy with me, and I used to come up from the mindset like, yeah, I'll disprove them. Philosophy's all wrong. It's all stupid. Right? They don't know what they're talking about. And as I began to explore philosophy, I began to think about these questions. I'm a very open-minded person. I really try to approach things from a very open-minded perspective. I'm like, wait a second, some of these questions make sense to me. And I started really exploring more. I read Rabbi Slifkin's book, obviously. I read all these books. I read Gerald Schroeder. And then some of these questions, I'm not satisfied with this answer. I think this explanation is better. Maybe I should not. And then once I realized that I did not believe in Hashem, it took me like a little bit of time. I would say a year to decide, okay, do I still want to be from? What's the argument they always make? The what's it called? Pascal's wager, right? Right. For the chance, like my Rosh Yeshiva knows, so I always get that argument, and I'm sorry, but it's not the best argument. I get it. Either way, do I still want to live from my family? Because I really love my parents. It obviously was very hard for me to tell them that I don't believe in Hashem.
Do they say Shiva for you?
No, they're very chill. They're very chill. They were really good parents. They weren't. That's why I never had any animosity. They're very chill. They're very respectful of me. Again, I'm an adult now, so it's not like they really. Like if I was a child, there's not more they could be worried about. When I'm an adult, they kind of just accepted it. Okay, we still love you. We accept you, right? But
let me chime in on this a little bit. Right. So in terms of sitting Shiva, I don't think anyone really did that. I mean, it may have appeared somewhere, some book. I don't think that when people convert out of Christianity or out of Judaism, they sat Shiva. But why didn't you identify as what I identify with, which is being an optimistic agnostic instead of just saying like, "Mamish, I'm an atheist"?
Honestly,
I just want to say I really want to say thanks for engaging, brother. It was very nice. All the best, guys.
Okay, take it easy.
Shalom.
I don't mind. I'll be honest with you. I don't like talking about this so much. I don't like turning people off from religion, because I think people is very, and not just that. I don't like turning people off from atheism either, or any other very strong held beliefs, because I just feel like I know the difficult process of rethinking the beliefs. I don't want to really cause it on people, but I don't really talk too much about this.
I respect that so much.
Close friend. However, I will say there are certain actual philosophical issues I have with the concept of God.
No, that's
okay. Really fast, David. Do you speak about this anywhere? I would love to engage with you. That's why I'm asking, and I feel like I'm stable enough in Hashem to engage with you.
I only speak to my very close friends about this, I really know.
Okay.
Yeah, but I don't usually just debate about this online. But I'm not getting into what these issues are. But I have some very strong philosophical issues with the idea of the way Hashem is portrayed in the Torah.
No, that's fine.
The Torah is Sinai or true, and is it possible some sort of creator? Yes, but I wouldn't believe that he was good or cares about us. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, but that's in some way aligning yourself with like the Yud Gimel Karamuna. Like, who cares what the creed is in terms of Torah B'Ktav being a net good? I think you hurt more than help the situation by calling yourself an atheist, because you're like reinforcing the opposite side when you're really ultimately an optimistic agnostic. You're saying like you see the value of being sensitized by Torah mitzvahs, but only because you're not convinced. I said it all the time. I said it, today, in terms of the Akeda, that I have a problem with the Akeda. I have a problem with like probably like a handful of issues in the Chumash. However, there was a famous tshuva by the Radbaz. The Radbaz says that you don't even have to believe in God to be a kosher Yid. Now, this is different from, Sefer Karim and the Rambam, right? But the idea that it's individual moral training that distinguishes you as Yid, technically, and not passing some religious test. So it seems like the God that you don't believe in, I don't believe in either. And most people don't believe in either, but because it's not what you claim to believe in, it's what you can defend. And I don't think the average person rationally could defend things that you have issues with, right? They just say they believe because they want a good shidduch, they want, like put their kids in the right school, this and that. But in terms, I don't think you're an atheist. I think you are a healthy religious person, which means that you can't prove that God exists. There's evidence on both sides, but I'm pretty sure that you wish that you were wrong about your conclusions that, he doesn't exist, because when someone accepts or keeps Torah properly, it actually makes them better.
I don't think that's necessarily true. There's two things else. I do have some issue with Frumkeit. I don't think it's especially the modern Yeshiva system. I think the Modoc system does some things right, also some things wrong. I have critiques, and that I think could be fixed. But I think that's not exactly the point. I think the point is more about just purely belief. Like, I have some actual philosophical issues with the believing in Hashem. Now, do I wish it were to be true? I think I used to wish it were to be true. Now I guess I'm somewhat indifferent. I obviously don't like the fact that I'm going to no longer exist, or that I believe that I'm going to no longer exist once I pass away. That bothers me. I think that would bother anybody. But I think that my real the reason I wouldn't call myself, I don't mind saying agnostic. The reason I wouldn't call myself and honestly, I'll even say this: I don't mind saying agnostic, and I don't mind calling myself Jewish either. And I do identify strongly as Jewish. And I would say I'm going to teach my kids about Hanukkah, about Purim, and all the Yom Tovim, which I do appreciate and love. And I will take them to my parents for Pesach, because I don't think you guys have to believe in Hashem to do a lot of the mitzvahs, and specifically the ones that are cultural, right? And I'm talking about restricting Allah, more like just positive cultural. I think that's a very Homo sapien, very human thing to have culture that you pass on to your kids. I think it's very important. So it's like a beautiful, rich culture like Ashkenazi Judaism. And I think that my point is, I don't really want to call myself a positive agnostic. I don't want to say that I believe in God. I don't mind saying I'm religious, because I keep some sort of traditional Judaism. I just don't want to say that I believe in God, because I have specific issues with it.
I know, but you have more in common with people who believe in God than people who don't. That's the thing. So being for the greater good, it's better for us all if you pick a side, and it's a side that aligns with your outlook more. At the end of the day, you align more with. Look, I have an issue with Frumkeit. Everybody calls me a freaking heretic, because of this. Because I've realized, if you're going to be Jewish, and on top of that, be proud to be Jewish, and not encourage what you're proud of, that makes you a bigot. Okay. I went back into the halacha, and I said, yeah, okay. There's some portions here that sound a little bigoted, but overall, it's not bigoted. It's universal. So then I did what I had to do, in order to properly call myself religious. I feel like I'm following the religion the way God wanted it to be followed. Apart from Achronim and Rishonim, who just sort of, a Kabbalah, that their existence is like a net loss, and I'm a big fan of the Rambam, and even the Rambam says some silly things. Okay, but I don't let them define what religion is at the end of the day. Religion, ultimately, in terms of what it is, hashkafically, is Torah Shebiktav. If it, in terms of where you're going to spend eternity, it doesn't appear in the Torah. In terms of, Satan or Shadim or the notion of a dibuk, it doesn't appear in the Torah. In terms of Jews being superior, chelek olakam imal mamish, all this stuff, it doesn't appear in the Torah. So I'm not going to let them define what I am. I'm going to tell them they're following the wrong religion, and I'm going to try to debate them on it, because that's I'm scared to see where this world would be if people dropped Christianity and dropped Judaism. It would be in a worse place, so it's my job to embolden and strengthen the fighters, not in any way give credence, or in any way strengthen the opposition.
I think that's what you're starting to see. Exactly what you said, Asher, is less people are religious and the world's issues are not getting solved. In fact, I think we're pushing issues further. So now men are women, women are men. We've already seen the outrage that has come from that, right? Men are now saying they can partake of women's sports and they're dominating the sports. And it's like, we've developed new issues. We haven't solved humanity's issues. We've developed new issues that now the later generations are going to have to try and solve.
Yeah, we meaning, I mean, secularists.
We humans, humans, we as humans. Sorry.
Yeah, and rationalists in the religious world, you know, for example, you mentioned Rabbi Slifkin. I mean, he's on the left. You know, I don't know why you can't be a rationalist in Judaism and be on the right, which means that they're one step away, you know, from being an atheistical leftist. You know, right now they're religious leftists. I mean, it's similar, I mean, to libertarians in the Conservative Party. They're one step away, you know, or like whatever. When libertarians give birth to liberals and liberals give birth to leftists, right? We have to keep, in some way, not turn our back on religion and realize and publicly acknowledge where we screwed it up. And it's not Torah Shebiktav, although we have to stop walking around saying that we could prove that the Chumash is perfect, okay? And I know it goes against our creed, but there's some parts in it that we should honestly say should have been worded differently because they hurt more than they help, especially when people go off on a limb and say, well, you can't understand it unless you learn by this rabbi. Then it shouldn't even be there to begin with. Acknowledge that for the most part, it's a net gain to society. For the most part, that's where our religiosity, you know, starts and ends. The problem is in the Orthodox world, in order for you to identify as a religious person, you have to keep a certain amount of things. You have to look a certain way. You have to live in a certain neighborhood, or then you're not religious. We have to change that. Being religious means articulating where your values come from. That should be the new standard. Not keeping kosher and keeping Shabbos, because anyone could do that. You know, but not anyone could defend or like argue the existence of a good God and you know, with the effect of that God in people's lives. That's what we can prove, right? I mean, we can't prove God. There's evidence for God and evidence for not God. You know, so we need you on our side, you know, because it's a losing battle, especially with all the Kabbalists and other Rabbi Mizrahis out there. And, you know, every second word is Gehenna, you know, and semen and wigs. Stupidity. So then the way I see it, the closer you get to Chazal, the more rationalist, I mean, they happen to be with the Gaonim, with the Rambam, and they still fall short. You know, I never bought the whole notion of your Yeridat HaDorot, that only because we're so disconnected that we're automatically dumber. It's not true. We can save Judaism by pointing it back, you know, to well, I guess this somewhat supports Yeridat HaDorot, to like what was closer in terms of what the Torah actually said. You know, and it doesn't affect Torah Sheba'al Peh. Like if you just believe Torah Sheba'al Peh are the plain rulings of the Sanhedrin that don't include anything metaphysical.
Like you read that Hadarot, and like everyone's saying you read this at Torah. So like, because it's some yeshivas, like I don't hear it this way. I'm not used to that. What would you classify yourself growing up? Like were you yeshivas, Haredi, Modocs? Like
oh no, I converted. I mean, I converted 25 years ago.
Hey, you converted.
Yeah. Right. You know, so then I've been a searcher for a while. I mean, I'll tell you, I'm 46 now. I mean, I converted 25 years ago. I moved to Israel. I learned in Aish. I learned in Ursameach, and I was in Makarv in Hebrew U for 5 years. I worked for Jeff Seidel. And, you know, as I was reaching out to, you know, Jews and like overseas programs and birthright kids, putting them in yeshiva, I came to the realization, like, you know what? I'm going to start reaching out to Gentiles too, because we got more Gentiles than born Jews in our programs. All right, then I went to the Rosh Yeshiva, or my friend went to the Rosh Yeshiva of the Derek program in Orsameach. I think he's still there, Rabbi Moshe Lazarus, and he basically wrote a letter saying that it's okay to do it. Everybody calls me a heretic for doing it, right? There's no halacha that says not to do it, but I refuse, because I converted to Judaism, like I refuse to believe that my mother, you know, comes from the Sitra Achra, from the unclean klipas, like all this stupid stuff that Kabbalists believe, right? Because it made Judaism look primitive and backwards. So I didn't leave one cult to enter another cult. And then the more I learned Judaism, like real, I mean, like sourced out Judaism, right? I mean, like the Gemara, the Tosefta, your Mishnayos, like I realized that Judaism is not bigoted.
By the way.
What?
How many Mesachtas were you Messiah?
Oh, I went to a Bat Tshuva yeshiva. Yeah, so in terms of how many block Gemara do I have, like from that perspective, it doesn't exist in the yeshiva, like in the Bat Tshuva vocabulary. So from that perspective, I mean, consider me a Bat Tshuva. I know what I know because when I lived in Israel, I started learning with Temanim. And they introduced me to the Rambam. They introduced me to the notion that, I mean, of like the principle laid down by the Rambam of Beis Din Gadol Sheber Yerushalayim Chem Iker Torah Sheba'al Peh, that everything that we consider Torah Sheba'al Peh has to come from the Beis Din Gadol, which freed me of so much stuff that I was carrying around that I had to justify as Torah Sheba'al Peh, right? That I feel makes the average Jew check his brain as like at the door and not have to justify everything he believes because everything's Torah Sheba'al Peh. It's Booker.
Facts.
Yeah, so it's not. I'm not. I wish I was more yeshivas. I barely made it get to the base measures program in Aish, right? Like, and then I went solo. Meaning I would learn at the Mir, I would learn here. But like under the principle that everything has to come from the Sanhedrin, in terms of like Lamaisa, what you do, in terms of what you believe, has to appear in the Chumash. All right, so that's my form of Judaism. It's Orthodox Judaism because I believe in Torah Sheba'al Peh, but what I define as Torah Sheba'al Peh is completely different than I don't know, like what possibly Rabbi like Ovadia Yosef would classify Torah Sheba'al Peh. I mean, the Lubavitchers believe that every sikha from the Rebbe is Torah Sheba'al Peh. So it's a huge zombification of Judaism. I'm saying that there's a place for you in Frumkeit, but you would have to redefine what Frumkeit is. And it's not the Chazon Ish. What?
First of all, how much halacha do you keep on the database? Also, do you believe in Yud Kei Vav Kei? Like, I'm saying, do you believe Yud Kei Vav Kei exists? Or maybe what I'm getting from you is that you're not saying we know for a fact Yud Kei Vav Kei exists, just more the effect he has on people's lives is what you can
absolutely
determine.
I think that everyone truly believes what I believe, right? And it's just being dishonest about it. Saying,
People,
what?
The back for sure.
Yeah, well, the Rambam goes further. Like the Rambam says, it's not a mitzvah to believe in God. He says it's a mitzvah to know God. Who the heck can know God? All right. I mean, it's all lip service. Nobody believes this stuff. We acknowledge the positive impact Torah mitzvahs has made in humanity, and we realize that, what? If there is no God, I really wish there is a God because of people's lives who have been changed. And I'm not talking about crappy people, saying they're religious. I'm talking about more from a Christian perspective, let's say. That someone comes out of jail and wants to change your life around and they give their life to God. I mean, you don't see it so much in the religious world, like in the religious Jewish world, but you do see it in the Christian world. Muslims also. People who want to stop mistreating their wives.
Interesting. What? I mean, interesting. You do see it actually somewhat, and I don't know if you're familiar with the Waterbury Yeshiva.
Yeah. Yeah, in Connecticut.
I live in Waterbury.
Yeah, what do you say?
I live in Waterbury.
Oh, I do too, currently. I just doxed myself. Thank you very much. I don't know if you know where Fulton Park is.
I do. I live down the street from there.
Bro, that's great.
I followed you so I can meet you someday. We can go out and eat. That's all good.
Absolutely. Anyways, so I think that Rakilis, I don't respect anybody else more in the entire world. I really think he's the most. I think I'll be the next Gadol Adar. I think he really is the most intelligent. I would say, like, he's one of the Rebbeim I respect the most in the world. And I think the point is that he has a very similar thing to what you're saying. He kind of uses it to help a lot of these kids come from broken homes, a lot of trauma, a lot of suffering. And he uses Yiddishkeit and becoming from his way to help these kids just get their life on track and become really successful people. And I've seen it with so many friends, somebody who's went to Waterbury Yeshiva, right? Like, I've seen it as so many times that these kids are really changed people. They give their life to Hashem and they change their lives. And I get what you're saying. It's really an interesting point, interesting way to think about it.
I heard of the Waterbury Yeshiva. It's like the diaspora Yeshiva to some extent. I'm not a big fan. Like, I don't know exactly how they teach it, but in terms of bringing people closer to Yiddishkeit, is like giving them more of like a nationalistic ideal, like you're special, you're Jewish, love every Jew. It's just like they just double dose you on Musar, and I don't think that makes better people. I mean, it's just... I don't think that we need more Achdus and more Ahavis Israel. I don't think we need that. That we have to be able to articulate. You know what?
We need ethics.
Yeah, ethics. That's all. Now I get it. The average person cannot connect, from that perspective. But the average person wants to be part of a club.
What David said.
But atheists, the most valuable people out there, I mean, from my perspective, are people who have an ethical outlet, but they don't know how to fill it. And these are these atheistical college kids who want to do good, so they're a sponge because they're so studious. They're a sponge, for every utopian pursuit out there, But like you said, they call it the patriarchy, social justice. But if they said no, Judaism, right? And when I say Judaism, I mean everything that comes from that ethically, whether it's Christianity or Islam, has been an ethical net gain, while all these attempts to reinvent the wheel ethically only leave blood and carnage, right? If they present it from that perspective, they're like, wow, not a social warrior. I want to be a Torah warrior, but there aren't enough people on our side. So we need for you to, put the kippah back on, and be a rationalist from the right, while most rationalists in Judaism, unfortunately, are on the left. And they only make, they undermine the Torah, they push left, like YCT, like Yeshiva Chavevei Torah, like Avi Weiss. I mean, this is the most destructive thing in Judaism I've ever seen, that they basically take leftism and they put a kippah on it, right? And it's just, eventually these guys will just end up dropping the Judaism, but keeping the leftism. So
I'm going to say this, and I really hope I don't offend. I feel like there might be some underlining purpose to it, because with a lot of the perspectives on that side, your focus on family, your focus on peace, your focus on positive relationships kind of goes downhill. And there's things to gain in a world of chaos. Do you disagree?
That's interesting, because that's a Kabbalistic idea, which I completely disagree with. So they.
I mean, I know you disagree with it personally, but do you see the fact that it could be a situation where
no, it's not rational.
Kabbalists are taking root,
so Shabtai Tzvi,
these viewpoints so that they can gain out of it?
Are you talking about like a knight in shining armor create the problem to then be the solution?
No, I'm saying don't speak against the problem, and while you're too busy going back and forth, I can get something out of it while you're not looking.
I mean, clearly, like, we could always learn what not to do from these people. Like Shabtai Tzvi believed in this idea by the Arizal of gathering the netzitzot. I mean, Tikkun Olam is not what people think it is. Tikkun Olam, people think, is like social action nowadays, cleaning up the streets. They thought that in order to repair the world, you actually have to do evil, because only by doing evil, like, do you find the sparks, certain sparks, that it's our job to gather as Jews in order to restore the way, things to the way they should be, right? So they started doing, I mean, they modified like the liturgy, Mater Asurim, with that God in some way allows the prohibited, that's not rational enough for me to believe it. I don't know.
Did Hillel or Shammai have that perspective? Because I think that Jesus had that kind of perspective where you don't say that you do evil for the sake of doing good.
Wow.
It's Paul. He says, if I'm understanding your assertion right, he's saying, do we continue to do evil so that good may abound? Meaning, so that God may be ever more like good. And then he's like, no, we shouldn't. But I don't know if I'm understanding your assertion.
Did Paul get that from? So, what is it, Gimiel? Did he follow under Hillel or Shammai?
Hillel.
Right.
He fell. Okay. So, Kabbalists, did they follow under Hillel or Shammai?
Both.
Yeah, you have from both houses. So, Hillel was just a little more lenient than. So, can you explain yourself a little more so that I can make an intellectual statement rather than just assume what you mean?
Well, it's not necessarily too much that I can go deep in or taking aside. A lot of people think that for greatness to go forth or for good to come forth, they need a little bit of evil to go with it.
Yeah.
And like what he just said, it's a Kabbalistic approach.
It sounds like a left-wing approach. The whole notion of like reimagine education, reimagine this, reimagine that. It's like I'm going to be mean to my wife and expect to get a better result. I
have a question. So I was going to ask you this last time I was on the live, but you approach a lot of things as left and right.
Everything is left and right. Everything.
Yeah, I'm not left or right. I think most people are not.
If you're a Bible believer, you're on the right.
No, I'm not.
You are.
That's not true.
All right.
I think there are some morals that agree with the right.
Oh, some
conservative. No, wait.
For the most part, clearly.
Nah,
Are you libertarian?
no, I'm not anything.
Well, libertarian tends to be a bit more like in the middle, where they're like, okay, you do what you want to do, leave me alone. Don't come for me and mine, and I won't retaliate, but I'm not going to come for you and yours. It's kind of more middle ground.
Libertarians lean always to the right if there's always two choices. They always
Correct.
right.
Correct.
So they're really not in the middle.
I'd rather not
hold on, like
Americans.
Okay, like let me give you an example. Let me just right. Correct. However, like when it comes to adjudicating another person's personal lives, they tend to want to stay out of it. Like I do not want to adjudicate whether a woman can or cannot get the thing that I don't want to say to kick his life, but if she doesn't want a pregnancy. So they stay out of it. They're like, that doesn't affect me and mine, so I want to stay out of it. I'm not for it. I'm not against it. Leave me alone. So that's more of a libertarian view.
Hey, guys,
I'm not.
so 1 second, guys, because I want to just correct a few things. I definitely used to be a full libertarian. Now I would consider myself somewhat libertarian, or a libertarian right wing. There's a few things to correct. First of all, libertarians, I know some libertarian left wingers who lean left on every issue. I know some who lean right on every issue, such as myself. Right, and I know some who even consist of right-wing libertarians. However, there's a few things correct. Not all libertarians are pro-choice. There are a lot, and I would say the majority of right-wing libertarians are pro-life. It's a lot more complex than that. You shouldn't simplify it down to that. A lot of times, it has a lot to do with economics and capitalism, and much less to do with social laws. In a lot of cases, you'll find this. And
So I would say. So I would say that I'm against I'm not pro-choice, but I don't know. I think the issue is trying to label everything. I don't think everything needs a label, especially when it comes to like politics and stuff like that, because many people are fed up with both sides. So that's kind of how I feel about
when
it.
you're part of a two-party system, I mean, you have to pick a side. That's when your religion starts to matter. Right? I mean, with the idea that someone's religious but not political means that their values, their influence dies with them. You have to pick a side.
African American community, a lot of times people tell us to pick a side, but we have a situation which is why one of the sides is always winning over a majority of the people from other countries as well as African Americans, is that nobody's willing to bend enough to actually give what is needed to be given to build up a broken people. And so 9 times out of 10, they're not going to support right-wing viewpoints, because right-wing viewpoints have a end-all statement of do it yourself. And they have done it. And in the process of doing it, their lives were destroyed.
So it could be that they don't know the issues well enough.
Right.
Sorry?
They must not know the issues well enough. The idea that both sides are morally comparable and still call yourself a religious person means that you either don't know the issues well enough and think that they're worth, fighting for or not. If you actually knew that the left, as much as they incentivize people, with money and stuff like that, actually, isn't doesn't respect you. They keep you in an infantile state. I think if they were, I'm not saying the right is perfect. Okay, every group is a mixed bag, but to say that they're morally comparable, that they're both as equally reprehensible is not true. There's always one that's better than the other. So then find out what the issues are.
To the Black community, when it comes to religion and politics, if they see enough, just like David, then they tend to abstain and focus more so on their household. They focus more on what they're doing, and they tend to opt out of everything. Not necessarily right, but it's what they do for the preservation of the mind that they have left. And then their kids might then make decisions later that are extreme left or extreme right.
So they can't complain about it if they don't vote.
We definitely vote. We definitely vote. But I mean, as far as saying that it's just right or left and that's it, I think that it was made that way so that we have two trash parties to choose from.
Yeah, well,
right, but I think what Asher's saying is there's always up versus down, left versus right. He's saying there's a stark contrast always. And yes, because unfortunately it has been pushed into the left versus right. You can fall in the middle, but on specific like the A word, you're going to have to pick a side. You will, or not vote at all, right? That's the point. And most libertarians say, as long as you're not hurting other people. I'm sorry.
Right.
David.
That's why I said I'm not a libertarian. I'm not for abortion.
Can you separate?
What? Huh? Can I do what?
Separate Republican and Democrat from right and left. Those are very different things. People think right and left. They think the Republican Party and Democrat Party. I don't think many people will tell you that politicians and politics is not corrupt. Everyone agrees they are corrupt. And honestly, I would say Republicans and Democrats are two sides of the same coin. But right-wing and left-wing beliefs don't necessarily have to or do correlate with Republicans and Democrats. I think it's very important to remember, for example, look at Trump, a Republican today. They're exactly the same as a Democrat from 10 years ago. Right, because the
Hey David, really fast to interrupt. Hey David, really fast. His thing just popped up and it started talking about elections. Just be mindful of what you say, so his live is okay.
Okay. So, and I think I'll end off here. Like, I think my point is that, like, just remember that not everybody likes the whole system we have now in America. That there are actual beliefs, and there are right beliefs and wrong beliefs. And to pretend that all beliefs are equally right and wrong, I think it's not really productive, because and it's also not true. Right? There are beliefs that are good, there are beliefs that are bad. And even if you're like myself, I don't necessarily believe it's objectively good or bad. I still believe there's a right and a wrong, there's good and a bad. There's what leads to happiness and flourishing. There's what leads to pain and suffering. And I think that's the point here.
Okay, wait.
Yeah, but let me address that. But I don't even understand what that is supposed to mean. I'm obviously a Christian. I obviously believe in the Bible. So there are things that I believe are objectively good and bad. That doesn't mean that I'm more right or more left. I don't agree with that mindset at all, that it's you pick this side or pick that side. Am I against the A word? Yes, I am. But that doesn't mean that now I want to side with the right, or that I want to be Republican. You know what I mean? I just like it's more nuanced than that.
Okay.
You know.
All right. So politics aside. All right. So no more politics for now. I want to ask David a question. Being that I think he could see the world a little differently and still appreciate Torah values and coming from a Jewish family. Would you say my attempt to in some way de-ethnicize Judaism, not the Jewish people, Judaism, and basically make it more universal, encouraging people who are looking for a religious outlet in their life, telling them that, you know what, they may want to consider Judaism. Do you think this is something that Judaism is missing?
It's a very nuanced question, and I don't think there's a simple answer to it. It's the first time I'm really hearing it like this. Like, my father was involved in Geratei Shavin, right? Like Noahide Nation. And I was definitely very open to that. I thought that was amazing. Regarding whether we should de-ethnicize Judaism, I'm not sure if I would be pro that, because I don't know necessarily if you can do. I think one of the things that kept the moral values of Judaism so strong is the no intermarriage law, is the fact that people felt very connected ethnically as well as religiously. And I think that it's the way we look at each other as sort of family. And I think that, like, I think you can get around. It's a very Homo sapien, very human thing to want to be connected to people who you share things with. I think it's going to be hard to replicate that outside of a very small tribal community, right? It's a very small nationalistic tribal community.
Yeah, but you focus on the first part. In terms of encouraging Judaism as an alternative to atheism, it was really what my question was about. Good.
As a philosophy, sure. I think it's definitely a lot of tenets of Judaism can be very good if approached as a philosophy. If we should de-ethnicize religion, I'm not sure.
No. I mean, forget about de-ethnicize religion. In terms of offering someone who's looking for a religion, saying that, you know what, you may want to consider Judaism, is there anything wrong with that?
I don't think anything wrong. And I think that definitely we should encourage a lot of quote-unquote atheists to look at the tenets of Judaism and take lessons from them. I don't know if they would become full-on religious. I know that some people might be up for that. I think that a lot of them can really learn from Judaism for sure.
So why do you think that the average rabbi is against it?
I think it's because of the second reason I said. I think it's just too much tied right now into ethnicity, especially among from people. It's too much tied into that, and I think it's very hard to separate from that. I don't think it's necessarily possible, or is it even a good thing? I think that's definitely a big part of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because they'll never explain it like that, by the way. But from that perspective, it shows that the ethnic component is the problem. From that perspective, instead of saying, like, similar to Muslims, I mean, someone could be like a direct descendant to Muhammad, but he would keep professing that Islam is a universal religion, right? But you're saying that if someone actually feels ingrained in the fabric of who are the Jewish people, they're in some way inherently going to want to make it hard for people to join.
Well, that's also what separates Hebrew Israelites and Black Messianics from the standard Jew.
Yeah,
is ethnicity.
It's the same problem. I mean, I see it as the same problem.
Exactly, I agree.
And I think you could obviously trace this back to the fact that I think, like, I don't need to get into any victim complex, but the Jews have obviously been through a lot. And I think it forced them to have this very strong view on keeping the ethnicity pure genes, which is the way I essentially look at it, right? Like my friend who's completely atheist was talking to this non-Jew. He told his mom, the first question he asked him is like, "Oh my gosh, you're not going to marry her, right?" Because he doesn't care, like, or you see, I think that actually, maybe I phrased it wrong. I think like he hooked up with a non-Jewish girl. I mean, like the first question his mother asked is like, "You're not going to marry her, right? Because or you don't like her, right?" Because they're not concerned much about the averot, the averis, or the halacha. They're concerned about the intermarriage. That's what I see a lot, and I understand it. And I don't think it might not be perfect. I think here's an interesting thing to consider. I think that if you spread Judaism among other ethnicities in a way that each ethnicity can have almost their own version of it, similar to what we have with Ashkenazim, Sephardim, I would think that would be more productive than trying to universalize or remove the ethnicity completely from the religion.
Yeah, but
I think that like humans naturally need to have smaller, like tight-knit groups they can care about or share values with. I think it's a very human thing. I think it's too ingrained in our 400,000 years of evolutionary history to really just discard that or wish it could be different. So I think that we need smaller, tight-knit groups. I don't think we need to universalize things, and I don't think it's doable to universalize things. I think the tenets of Judaism can work for everybody. I will not deny that. I think the philosophy of Judaism is a beautiful, like Abrahamic religions, right? This sort of traditional view on life, on family, on marriage, on the world is a beautiful philosophy that can work for everybody. I don't think, though, that the religion should be made for everybody unless it's given to each culture slightly differently and everyone could have it for themselves. But I think we need to have the idea of sharing our culture with a smaller group of people. I think that leads to much more tzedakah, cohesiveness, a lot of those type of things. I think that's only because we feel like we're a family almost. And there can only be, I don't know if we can replicate that feeling among the entire world. I think it might only be able to be replicated among smaller groups of people.
Yeah, that's why I made a distinction between de-ethnicizing the people, but not the religion. That means as a person, like you could be proud to be Bukharian, let's say, right? That's your community. But to say that Judaism has favorites, that's the issue with the Rabbanut. I mean, the Rabbanut's attempt is to ethnicize the religion. They've decided on a bunch of groups, mainly Sephardi and Ashkenazi. Like what did Rabbi Vadia Yosef try to do? I mean, by creating a Dot HaMizrach, like he tried to unite every non-Ashkenazi under the banner of Sephardi, right? And if you don't fit the mold of the Rabbanut, then you're not Jewish, right? From that perspective, I'm for de-ethnicizing the religion. Absolutely, there's an ethnic component to the Jewish people. Like if you're from China, one of the Kaifeng Jews, you have your own ethnic identity, but it shouldn't really affect your theology. Because they're saying like we own this theology. Like if you don't enter like to the doors of the Sephardi synagogue, you're not Jewish. Or like if the Rabbanut doesn't acknowledge you, you're not Jewish. From that perspective, I'm for de-ethnicizing every community. It's not a coincidence that most Black converts in Judaism become Ashkenazi for some reason. So it shows that ethnicity or that group of people seem to align more with their values for whatever reason, and that's fine. There should be certain groups. Some guys are more comfortable in Sephardi synagogues. But to say that Judaism is an ethno-religion, and it seems that it matters what the people have to say about it. I mean, apart from source material, right? Torah Shebiktav, Torah Shebal-Peh. The Sanhedrin said something, it's Judaism. But only because some rabbi, for example, Chabad. I mean, Chabad might as well be, a country in the way they like ethnicize their belief system. That if they don't accept your conversion, you're not Jewish. Instead of saying, no, you just belong to a different community. You keep Torah, you keep halacha. I don't like your rabbi, but, if you went through the halakhic process, you're Jewish. It's not like, oh, well, nobody accepts you as Jewish. The state of Israel doesn't recognize you as Jewish. This is like calling out for Judaism to be de-ethnicized is similar to calling out for Judaism to be depoliticized. Politics nor ethnicity they shouldn't have to have a say on the final outcome of Judaism. Torah has a say on the final outcome of Judaism. That's my point.
It's definitely a interesting perspective. I probably think more about it. I never really heard this before, right? Like, I don't think I've really heard the whole, like, really de-ethnicizing Judaism. It's something to think about for sure, because what you're saying makes sense. And honestly, like, I almost get it. Like, you're right. The philosophy of Judaism should not be constricted to just some people. But I guess that's my intuition, it's too much ingrained in me as someone who grew up in a very Ashkenazi. Like, I'm fully blood Ashkenazi, and I grew up so Ashkenazi, and I grew up within like just a very Ashkenazi community. It's just almost hard for me to accept it, right? Like, it's very new idea to me. I never really approach it that way. It's something to think about for sure. I'm not sure. I get what you're saying for sure though.
Yeah, what yeshiva did you go to?
I went to. I don't want to dox myself too much in here. I went to a few yeshivas. I've been through the yeshivas. I'll say, like, most recently was Waterbury, and I'm not gonna. Most recent high school.
Yeah, but that doesn't count. I mean, that doesn't single you out. Huh?
Sorry, say that again.
No, I mean, Waterbury doesn't single you out instead of just being like a Bachuva or something. No, I'm thinking like you said Panovich. Like if you said like Broyers or something.
Right. So in terms of like stark normal, I was gonna go to the mirror, and that's kind of when my whole epiphany happened. Or like it was already happening for a while. It's not like a instant thing, but I was already accepted into the mirror, and I speak to Mayor Bain about it. I would say I was third year then, and that's kind of where I started turning around. And third year is where people tend to go to the mirror. 30 base measures. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the terminology, and that's kind of where things started happening, which is why I never ended up going to the mirror. But in terms of before the mirror, I went to like some big yeshivas that you've probably heard of, but because like they're not like post third year base measures yeshivas, they're not going to be something like Panovich, Brisk, or the mirror though.
Right. No,
but I went to like yeshivas that you've heard of though. Yeah.
No, the mirror. There's two mirrors. There's people who dorm in the mirror and people who learn at the mirror. But everybody learns at the miror. I mean, if you just go there and you pick like a Harusa and learn. But there's probably like 100 guys. Is it 100? Like people who actually dorm at the mirror. So that means you're accepted actually like mamish at the mirror. But fine, yeah, all right. I'm trying to place you in a box to see how you view the world.
I understand. Very, very typical. I'll tell you exactly. Very typical. Like I would say, like I was somewhat of a Bayeshire kid. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that terminology as well. I could go to regular yeshiva's family, yeshiva's community, scuffically, like regular. I wish I could say the names because these people. I know these people, like the names of the rebbeim. But I would just say, the regular yeshivish way of looking at the world, like not like Hafter or some more. I was not part of the Modox community, not Baltimore Modox either. Very much Brooklyn, 5 towns yeshivish. That's I think the best way to say it.
Yeah. Well, join me. Join me in encouraging people to become Jewish, but not their type of Jewish, like source-based, like a rationalistic perspective. It's more of a philosophy. It's still, you still have to convert to it, right? I guess you must agree with my position on Christianity also, that it's better to leave Christians as Christians than to destroy their faith and make them atheists, which is essentially what I think these counter missionaries do.
Yeah, 100%. And I will say this, like, I think I'm gonna have to drop that anyway, because I do have to make a phone call, but I think that, just to leave with this, I think that there is truth where you're saying that I could really put my yarmulke back on and do a lot of good that way, but I also think I have a unique position. And I think a lot of, more smarter atheists, that within the atheistic community, within the people who are very and have a lot of animosity towards religion, I think I could reach a lot more people that way by kind of open up to the fact that they don't have to have this animosity, and that it's because their Rebbe hit them or their daddy was not nice to them, right? So they have to now start hating religion, and have to realize that just because you have this animosity, this trauma, doesn't mean you have to go to religion. And I think I could reach a lot of people that way. And as somebody who's not a yarmulke, somebody who's going to a lot of, raves, festivals, right? Like I'm out in this very normally left-wing world, and I have a lot of friends who are left-wing. Right. I think I could reach a lot of people that way, but just explain to them, show them a more nuanced view on these takes. Yeah. That's really what I see my job as right now.
Yeah, the problem is that the people like this, typically give birth to liberals, and they, their grandkids will be leftists. Like if you don't identify with the group, somehow, even if you're trying to change the group from the inside out, you have to. Making the world a better place is a team effort. And so in terms of being such a lone voice, this is why I proselytize.
I don't know, Asher, you're kind of a lone voice.
Yeah, no, but I proselytize. That's the difference. If I didn't proselytize,
that's what I'm saying,
it'd be futile.
But that's what he said. It's what I heard, that he's affecting people from, the inside, showing a more nuanced.
Yeah, but he's creating a new movement, essentially. I'm trying to reform the old movement. I guess not to use that term, lahavdil. Like I'm trying to fix. You know what I'm trying to do.
Yeah, I know.
Anyways, on that note, let's go ahead and step out for today.